I was deadheading roses in my late husband's memorial garden when Veronica Sterling appeared on my driveway with a clipboard, heels clicking like a countdown timer. And that particular smile women my age recognize instantly. The one that says she's about to ruin your day and enjoy every second of it. The morning had been peaceful until then. June sunshine filtering through the oak trees Carlos planted 15 years ago. The smell of earth and blooms mixing with my coffee. And the kind of quiet that makes you believe the world might leave you alone for just a little while longer. I should have known better. Peace never lasts when someone decides you don't deserve it. She stopped 3 feet from the garden bed, careful not to step on the grass, clipboard pressed against her chest like a shield. Her outfit was immaculate in that aggressive way some women use clothing as armor. Cream blazer, pressed slacks, heels that had no business on a residential sidewalk at 9 in the morning on a Saturday. Everything about her screamed authority she hadn't earned, but fully intended to wield. "Good morning, Mrs. Morales." Her voice had that particular brightness people use when they're about to deliver bad news and want you to know they're enjoying it. I straightened from the rosebush, pulling off my gardening gloves slowly, buying time to read the situation. My back protested the movement. 52 years old and 2 years of grief had taught my body new ways to ache. "Good morning." I didn't offer her name because I didn't know it yet. New to the neighborhood, maybe, or just new to deciding my business was hers. Either way, the clipboard and the smile told me everything I needed to know about where this was heading. "I'm Veronica Sterling, and HOA president." She said it like she was announcing royalty, like those 3 words should make me straighten up, pay attention, show the proper respect. I dealt with people like this my whole career, the ones who think a title makes them important rather than the work they do. I stayed quiet, waiting, because silence makes people reveal more than questions ever do. "I'm here about a violation notice." She pulled a paper from the clipboard with a flourish, held it out toward me, but didn't step close enough for me to take it, making me come to her. Small power play, obvious and petty, but effective if you didn't recognize it for what it was. I walked over, took the paper, scanned it quickly. The words swam a bit in the morning light. Getting old meant reading glasses I kept forgetting to bring outside, but I caught the important parts. Unauthorized memorial structure, violation of aesthetic standards, 30 days to remove or face fines escalating to forced remediation. The bench, Carlos's bench, the one he'd built with his own hands in the last good months before the heart attack took him. Carved from cedar, weatherproofed, positioned just right to catch the sunset through the oak branches. The one with his name and dates burned into the backrest in his own careful handwriting. The one where I sat every evening and told him about my day like he was still there to hear it. "This bench has been here for 18 months. My voice came out level, calm, professional. The voice I used when I needed to stay in control and make sure everyone knew it. Not the voice of a grieving widow. The voice of someone who had dealt with worse than this and would deal with worse again. Previous board, previous standards. We've updated our aesthetic guidelines. Memorial structures require explicit approval. This one wasn't approved." She smiled when she said it. Actually smiled, like she'd just won something. "I have the email approval from 2 years ago. When we were planning it, I kept my tone even, factual, not defensive, just stating reality and waiting to see how she'd twist it. Previous administration. New standards supersede old approvals. The structure needs to be removed." She turned slightly, angling toward the street, making sure her voice would carry to any neighbor who might be listening. "Performance art. Everything about this was performance. 30 days, Mrs. Morales. After that, the fines begin. And if you don't comply within 90 days, the HOA has the right to remove it ourselves and bill you for the cost." The threat hung in the air between us, heavy and deliberate. I looked at the paper again, then at her, then back at the bench where I could see Carlos's name carved into the wood. The bench where I'd sat with him during his last summer, where he'd held my hand and promised me everything would be okay, even though we both knew it wouldn't be. The bench where I'd told him I was scared, and he'd said I was the strongest person he knew, and I'd better not prove him wrong by falling apart when he was gone. "I'm not removing my husband's memorial." I said it quietly, firmly, with the kind of certainty that comes from knowing exactly which hills are worth dying on. Her smile widened. She'd been waiting for this, hoping for it even. "Then you'll face the consequences." This is a community, Mrs. Morales. We have standards. Rules exist for everyone. She turned to leave, paused, looked back over her shoulder with that same bright, terrible smile. You know what they say, time to move on. And there it was, the cruelty underneath the clipboard and the press slacks and the talk about standards. The real message. Your grief is inconvenient. Your husband is dead. Get over it. Pack up his memory and move on so the rest of us don't have to think about mortality and loss and the fact that love doesn't stop just because a heart does. I stood there holding the violation notice, watching her walk back down my driveway, heels clicking in perfect rhythm, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder and more useful. Recognition. Because I'd seen this before. Different uniforms, different contexts, but the same essential playbook. Someone who'd found a little bit of power and decided it made them untouchable. She had no idea who she was dealing with, but she was about to find out. The sound of a screen door closing pulled my attention to the house next door. Maggie Chen stood on her porch, a teapot in one hand and 2 mugs in the other. Her expression a mix of concern and something that looked a lot like grim satisfaction. "I saw that," she called across the low fence between our properties. "You're going to need tea. And possibly a lawyer." Maggie was 67, retired teacher, widow like me, and one of those people who seem to know everything about everyone without ever appearing to gossip. She'd lived in this neighborhood for 40 years, raised 3 kids in that house, buried her husband Thomas 4 years ago. And in the 2 years since Carlos died, she'd become the closest thing I had to a mother figure, even though she was only 15 years older. I walked over to the fence, still holding the violation notice, and she handed me a mug of tea over the pickets. Jasmine green, the kind she grew in her own garden and dried herself. The scent alone was enough to lower my blood pressure by 10 points. "You know her?" I nodded toward where Veronica had disappeared around the corner, heading back to whatever perfectly appointed house she ruled with her clipboard and her cruelty. Maggie's expression darkened. "Know of her. New HOA president. Elected 8 months ago. Been on a tear ever since." She gestured toward my bench. "That's the 4th memorial structure she's targeted. All of them belonging to widows. All of them worth money if the property went up for sale." I looked at her sharply over the rim of my mug. "You think this is about forcing a sale?" Maggie nodded slowly, her eyes knowing and sad. "Patricia Wu, 3 houses down, lost her husband 2 years ago. Veronica cited her for a koi pond memorial. Harassment lasted 6 months. Patricia finally sold. Below market value. Guess who bought it?" I didn't need to guess. Veronica's LLC. She flipped it 4 months later for $200,000 over what she paid. Maggie sipped her tea, let that information settle. Lisa Morrison. Divorced. Had a memorial garden for her mother. Same pattern. Soda Mum, bought by Veronica's company, flipped. Jennifer Hayes is fighting it right now. Single mom, memorial tree for her stillborn daughter. Veronica's been making her life hell. I stood there absorbing this, my professional mind clicking into gear even as my personal fury built in my chest. Pattern of behavior. Targeting vulnerable women. Using bureaucratic harassment to force property sales. Classic predatory real estate scheme dressed up as community standards. She doesn't know, does she? Maggie's question was gentle but pointed. "Know what? Who you are, what you do." I shook my head slowly. No reason she would. I don't advertise. And I've been too busy with work to get involved in neighborhood politics. Maggie smiled then, small and fierce. "Well, mija, I think that's about to change." We stood there in the morning sun, 2 widows holding tea and talking strategy over a fence. And I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Purpose beyond just getting through the day. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman Veronica had targeted. Every person who'd been told their grief was inconvenient. Every memorial that mattered more than money. "You going to tell her?" Maggie's eyes twinkled with something that looked like mischief. "Eventually, but not yet. Let her commit to the course first. Let her show everyone exactly who she is." Maggie raised her mug in a toast. Carlos would be proud. My throat tightened at the mention of his name, but I smiled through it. Carlos would tell me to be smart about it. Document everything. Stay calm. Let her make the mistakes. Maggie clinked her mug against mine. "Smart man, you listen to him." The screen door behind me slammed open, and Sophie burst onto my back porch, phone in one hand, Bride magazine in the other, looking frazzled in that particular way only a pregnant woman planning a wedding can achieve. Mom, the florist says garden roses are out of season for October and wants to substitute with something called spray roses, which sound cheap and I'm about to lose my mind and, oh my God, is that a violation notice? She'd spotted the paper on the patio table where I'd set it down, her voice rising with each word until she was almost shouting by the end. My daughter, 28 years old, 4 months pregnant, getting married in 4 months, and currently experiencing the full spectrum of wedding planning anxiety, amplified by hormones that made everything feel like a 5-alarm emergency. I held up a hand, the universal mother gesture for slow down and breathe. Spray roses are beautiful, they're just smaller, more delicate. And yes, that's a violation notice, but we're handling it. Sophie snatched up the paper, read it, and her face went through a series of expressions that would have been funny if they weren't so full of genuine distress. Confusion, disbelief, horror, rage. She wants you to remove Dad's bench, his memorial, the bench he built, the bench where I told him about the baby before he died. Her voice broke on the last word, and I was across the porch in 3 steps, pulling her into my arms, feeling her shake against me with the kind of tears that pregnancy hormones make impossible to control. We're not removing it, I promise you. I'm not letting her take this. She pulled back, wiping her eyes, trying to get control. Who even is she? Who does this? Dad's bench doesn't hurt anyone. It's beautiful. It's all we have left of him besides pictures and memories, and I can't lose it, Mom. I can't. I gripped her shoulders, made her look at me, used my mom voice. The one that had gotten her through scraped knees and bad breakups, and the worst day of both our lives when we got the call that Carlos had collapsed at work. You're not losing anything. Neither am I. This woman thinks she can bully us into compliance because she sees a widow and her daughter and thinks we're vulnerable. She's wrong. Sophie searched my face, found whatever she was looking for, nodded. What are you going to do? I smiled, calm and cold and certain. Exactly what your father would do. Build an airtight case, document everything, stay calm, and trust that truth outlasts intimidation. Sophie hugged me again, tighter this time, her hand unconsciously moving to rest on her belly where my grandchild grew. You sound like him when you talk like that. All cop voice and strategy. I laughed softly. 28 years married to your father. Some things rub off. She pulled back, wiped her eyes again, picked up her Bride magazine. Okay. I'm going to go call the florist back and tell her spray roses are perfect, and you're going to destroy this HOA witch. Not destroy, just make sure she faces appropriate consequences. Sophie grinned through her tears. Dad would have said the same thing, right before he absolutely destroyed someone. After she left, I stood on the porch for a long moment, looking at Carlos's bench, thinking about how much can change in 2 years, how you can go from married to widowed, from planning retirement together to planning it alone, from seeing a future stretching out ahead to seeing just one day at a time. But some things don't change. Justice still matters. Doing things the right way still counts. And protecting what you love is still worth the fight. I pulled out my phone, sent a quick text to Claudia. Need to talk. Office Monday? The response came back in 30 seconds. Claudia Ruiz had been my chief deputy for 3 years, my protege before that, and the kind of woman who could read volumes into a 2-line text. Everything okay? Nah. Define okay. Personal HOA issue. Possible pattern worth looking into. I could practically see her sitting up straighter wherever she was. Say no more. Monday morning. Coffee's on me. I pocketed my phone, picked up the violation notice, and walked back to Carlos's bench. Sat down on the smooth cedar he'd sanded and sealed with such care. Traced my fingers over his name carved into the wood. Felt the solid reality of it under my hands. You built something permanent, I told him. Told his memory, told the morning air. And I'm not letting anyone erase it. The weekend passed in a blur of wedding planning phone calls and garden work, and the kind of background anxiety that comes from knowing a fight is coming but not quite being here yet. Saturday evening, Sophie and her fiancé James came over for dinner. James was a good man, steady and kind, exactly the kind of partner I wanted for my daughter. He worked in software development, made her laugh, and treated her like she was precious. Carlos would have approved. Over pasta and salad, I told them about the violation notice, kept my tone light, factual, didn't want to add to Sophie's stress. James frowned into his wineglass. That doesn't make sense. HOA rules have to be consistent. They can't just change standards retroactively and target existing structures. He was right, but being right didn't always matter when the person making the rules didn't care about fairness. Legally, you're correct. Practically, HOA boards have a lot of discretion, and some people use that discretion as a weapon. Sophie pushed pasta around her plate, not eating. I still don't understand why she's doing this. What does she gain? I exchanged a look with James. He'd been around long enough to understand the calculus of cruelty. Some people just liked power. Some people needed someone beneath them to feel important. Some people see vulnerability and can't help but exploit it. Widows, divorcees, single mothers, anyone they think can't or won't fight back. Sophie's jaw set in that stubborn way she'd inherited from her father. You're gonna fight back, though, right? I smiled at my daughter, fierce and determined. I'm gonna do what needs to be done. The right way. The way that can't be challenged or dismissed or turned against me later. Sunday, I spent in my home office reviewing HOA bylaws and state regulations and county ordinance, the kind of legal homework I used to do for investigations, now applied to my own situation. It was strange, looking at my life through that lens, professional detachment meeting personal fury. The bylaws were clear. Memorial structures required board approval, but they also required written notice of rule changes with 90 days before enforcement. Veronica's 30-day deadline violated the HOA's own procedures. She was in such a hurry to push this through, she'd skip the required steps. Amateur mistake, or arrogance, maybe both. I made notes, documented everything, scanned the original approval email from 2 years ago, photographed the bench from multiple angles, pulled the property survey showing it was fully within my boundaries, built a file the way I'd built hundreds of case files over the years. Evidence matters, process matters, and both were on my side. Monday morning, I drove to the sheriff's office, my real office, the one I'd held for 3 years now, after 25 years working my way up through the ranks. County sheriff, elected position, 140 deputies under my command, responsible for law enforcement across 2,000 square miles of California countryside. The weight of the badge and the responsibility never got lighter, but it got familiar, like wearing boots that had molded to your feet over the years. Claudia was waiting in my office, 2 cups of coffee on the desk, her expression alert and curious. Okay, boss, what's the HOA situation? I closed the door, sat down, slid the violation notice across the desk, watched her read it, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to cold anger. She wants you to remove Carlos's bench, your husband's memorial? Her voice was tight with controlled fury. Claudia had been at the funeral, had helped me clean out Carlos's office, had shown up at my house at midnight with ice cream and whiskey more than once in the first 6 months. She knew what that bench meant. That's the current demand, but I think there's more to it. I walked her through what Maggie had told me, the pattern of targets, the property sales, the LLC purchases and flips. Claudia pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. What's her full name? Veronica Sterling. Claudia's search took 3 minutes. When she looked up, her expression was grim. She's got a record. Real estate fraud, settled out of court 5 years ago. And she's been named in 4 separate HOA harassment complaints across 2 counties in the last 3 years. I leaned forward. Any criminal charges? Number. All civil. She knows how to stay just inside the legal line. Or just rich enough that people don't push it to criminal. Claudia met my eyes. Boss, this woman is running a scheme. She targets vulnerable homeowners, harasses them into selling, buys below market through her LULC, flips for profit. Classic predatory real estate fraud. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Question is, what do we do about it? Claudia set down her tablet. What do you want to do about it? It was the right question, because I could handle this a dozen different ways. Some legal, some less so. Some fast, some slow, some that would feel satisfying in the moment, and some that would actually solve the problem. I want to do it right, by the book, so that when it's done, the system is stronger and she can't hurt anyone else. Claudia grinned. Carlos would approve. Everyone keeps saying that, 'cause it's true. You sound just like him when you talk strategy. I smiled, sad and proud at the same time. He taught me well. Now, let's see if I learned anything. We spent the next hour pulling case files on HOA-related complaints. Pattern was clear once you knew to look for it. 23 complaints in 14 months across the county. most from women, most involving HOA violations leading to property harassment. Some resulted in sales, some in bankruptcies from legal fees, none in criminal charges. Claudia shook her head. This is bigger than your situation. This is systemic. I know, which is why we need to handle it carefully. If this becomes about me using my position to retaliate, it taints everything, the investigation, the evidence, any future cases. So what's the play? I thought about it. About Carlos and his patience. About building things to last. About the difference between revenge and justice. I attend the HOA meeting, present my case, let her respond, document everything, keep my position quiet for now, let her show everyone exactly who she is before we show her who I am. Claudia nodded slowly. That's going to require a lot of patience. I looked at the photo on my desk, Carlos and me on our 20th anniversary, his arm around my shoulders. Both of us smiling like we'd just heard the world's best joke. Patience is all I've got left of him. Might as well put it to use. Tuesday evening came with the HOA meeting scheduled. Community Center 6:30. Agenda posted online with my violation prominently listed under old business. Veronica wanted this public, wanted everyone to see her enforce the rules, wanted to make an example. I dressed carefully. Not my uniform. Jeans and a nice blouse. Wedding ring still on my left hand where it hadn't moved in 2 years. Hair pulled back simple. The look of a grieving widow, which I was, but also the look of someone underestimated, which was exactly what I needed. The community center was already filling when I arrived. 60 people, maybe more. Way above normal attendance. Word had spread. People were curious, or concerned, or just hungry for drama in a neighborhood that usually ran quiet. Veronica stood at the front, setting up a laptop and projector, flanked by 2 other board members who looked nervous and uncomfortable. She saw me enter, smiled that same bright, terrible smile, and went back to her setup. I took a seat in the back, made eye contact with Maggie, who'd saved me a seat, nodded to a few neighbors I recognized, kept my expression calm and pleasant. The meeting started with procedural business. Minutes from last month, treasurer's report, committee updates. I listened with half my attention while the other half watched Veronica. The way she commanded the room, the way people deferred to her, the way she wielded the gavel like a scepter. Finally, we reached my item on the agenda. Next item, violation enforcement, Morales property, 247 Sycamore Lane. Veronica pulled up a photo on the projector. My house, my garden, Carlos's bench. This structure was erected without proper approval. It violates our updated aesthetic standards. The homeowner has been given 30 days to remove it voluntarily. She said it like she was discussing trash pickup, clinical, detached. No acknowledgement that she was talking about a memorial to a dead man. I stood up. I'd like to respond. Veronica's smile widened. Of course. Mrs. Morales, the floor is yours. I walked to the front, pulled out my phone, connected it to the projector, brought up my documentation. The original approval email, the property survey, photos showing the bench was within all setback requirements, the HOA bylaws showing that rule changes required 90 days notice before enforcement. I walked through it calmly, methodically, letting the facts speak for themselves. No emotion, no pleading, just evidence and procedure. When I finished, the room was quiet. People shifted in their seats. The board members looked at each other uncertainly. Veronica's smile had tightened around the edges. Previous approvals don't supersede new standards. The board has discretion to enforce aesthetic requirements. Her voice had an edge now. She hadn't expected me to come prepared. Your own bylaws require 90 days notice before enforcing new standards. You've given me 30. Technicalities. The spirit of the rules is what matters. She was losing ground and scrambling. I kept my voice level. Rules are rules. You can't enforce them selectively based on spirit. That's the definition of arbitrary. One of the other board members, a man in his 50s with the uncomfortable look of someone who wanted to be anywhere else, cleared his throat. Veronica, she's right about the notice period. The bylaws are clear. Veronica turned on him, sharp and sudden. We have discretion in urgent matters. What's urgent about a bench that's been there for 18 months? The question came from someone in the audience, a woman I didn't know, but her tone was pointed and skeptical. It's about maintaining standards. If we let one person slide, everyone wants special treatment. Veronica was trying to regain control, but the room had shifted. People were looking at the photos on the screen, the bench, the carved name, the roses growing around it. It's a memorial to her husband, someone else said. That's not exactly special treatment. That's human decency. Veronica's face flushed. This is about property values, about community standards, about rules that protect everyone. But her voice had risen, lost its careful control. She was angry now, and it showed. Maggie stood up from the back. I'd like to know something, Veronica. How many other memorial structures have you targeted this year? The room went very quiet. Veronica's flush deepened. That's not relevant. 3 that I know of. All owned by widows? All resulted in property sales. All bought by your LLC. Maggie's voice was calm but cutting, polite but devastating. That's a completely separate business matter. Is it though? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a pattern. Target grieving women. Use HOA violations to harass them. Buy their properties below market. Flip for profit. The room erupted. People talking over each other. Questions being shouted. The other board members looking like they wanted to disappear. Veronica hammered the gavel. Order! This is completely inappropriate. Ms. Chen, you're out of line. But the damage was done. The accusation hung in the air. And even if people didn't believe it fully, the seed was planted. I stayed quiet. Let it play out. This wasn't my fight to win tonight. It was enough to make people question, to document the response, to see how far Veronica would go. She called for a vote, demanded the board uphold the violation, put pressure on her fellow members to back her play. The vote was 2-1, violation upheld. I had 30 days. But as the meeting broke up, 3 different neighbors stopped me, told me they thought it was wrong, that they'd signed a petition against it if I wanted, that they remembered Carlos and thought his bench was beautiful. The tide was turning, slowly, but turning. Veronica caught me in the parking lot. Mrs. Morales. Her voice was ice now, the pretense of politeness gone. I turned, kept my expression neutral. You can fight this all you want, but I will win. I always do. People like you, women like you. You think you can stand up to authority and come out ahead. You can't. She stepped closer, invaded my space, her perfume overwhelming and chemical. Your husband is dead. This bench is a monument to the past. It's time to move on. Sell the house. Take your grief somewhere else. This neighborhood doesn't need your darkness. The cruelty was breathtaking, so casual, so confident. Like she'd said these things before and never faced consequences. I looked at her for a long moment, saw the anger in her eyes, the need to dominate, the absolute certainty that she was right and I was weak. I'm not moving on until I'm ready. I'm not selling. And I'm not removing my husband's memorial. My voice was quiet, steady. The voice I used right before I arrested someone who thought they could intimidate me. You're making a big mistake. Perhaps, but it's mine to make. I walked to my truck, drove home, sat on Carlos's bench in the gathering dark, and made a decision. Tomorrow I would install security cameras, document every interaction, build an airtight record of harassment, and wait. Because Veronica Sterling thought she was fighting a grieving widow, someone vulnerable, someone who would fold under pressure. She had no idea she was actually fighting the county sheriff. But she would, eventually. And when she found out, when the truth came to light, it wouldn't be because I'd announced it to win an argument. It would be because the system had worked, because evidence mattered more than authority, because justice took time but arrived eventually. I sat there in the dark, feeling the solid reality of the bench beneath me, and made a promise to the memory of my husband. I'll protect what you built, the right way, the way you taught me, with patience and evidence and truth. And somewhere in the evening air, I could almost hear his voice. That's my girl. Now show them what you're made of. The security cameras arrived Wednesday morning, professional grade, 4 of them, covering every angle of the front yard and garden. I installed them myself in 2 hours, running cable through the attic, mounting housings under the eaves, positioning lenses for maximum coverage with minimal blind spots. 28 years in law enforcement taught you to think like both the watched and the watcher. By noon, my entire property was under surveillance. Every approach, every angle, every possible interaction recorded in high definition with audio backup and cloud storage that couldn't be tampered with or erased. Carlos would have done the same thing. He'd been the careful one, the planner, the man who measured twice and cut once and never left anything to chance. I was just following his playbook now, applying it to a situation he never could have imagined but would have recognized instantly. Thursday morning, Veronica returned. I was watering the roses when her car pulled into my driveway. Black Mercedes, vanity plates. The whole performance of wealth and authority packed into German engineering and personalized registration. She got out wearing another immaculate outfit, this time with sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, clipboard in hand, phone in the other, that same smile that made my jaw clench. I kept watering, didn't acknowledge her arrival, made her come to me. Mrs. Morales. Her voice had an edge today. Less brightness, more steel. She was done pretending to be pleasant. I need to document the current state of the violation for our records. She held up her phone, started taking pictures. The bench, the garden, the roses, me standing there with the hose. "You're on my property," I said it calmly. Statement of fact, not a request. HOA business. I have the right to document violations. Not without 24 hours written notice. Your own bylaws. Section 7, subsection 3. I'd memorized the whole document by now. Every rule, every procedure, every protection they'd written in and now wanted to ignore. Her smile tightened. Technicalities again. Law, not technicalities. There's a difference. She lowered the phone but didn't step back. Stayed planted on my driveway, in my space, making her point. "You know what your problem is, Mrs. Morales? You think you're special. You think your grief entitles you to special treatment. It doesn't." The cruelty was more direct today, less veiled. She was escalating, testing to see if I'd react, hoping I'd give her something she could use. I turned off the hose, coiled it slowly, bought myself time to breathe through the fury. My grief doesn't entitle me to anything except the same rights as everyone else, which include not being harassed on my own property. Harassment, that's a strong word. Accurate, though. She stepped closer, invaded my space deliberately, phone still in hand, recording now. I could see the red light. "You're being difficult, uncooperative, hostile, even." She was building a narrative, creating a record that painted me as aggressive, unstable, dangerous. I stayed perfectly still, hands visible, voice calm, every word measured. "I'm being a homeowner who knows her rights. If that seems hostile, perhaps you should examine your expectations." Her face flushed. She wasn't used to people standing their ground, wasn't prepared for someone who wouldn't be intimidated. "The HOA will take further action, I promise you that. I'm sure you will. And I'll respond appropriately through proper channels." She stood there for another moment, clearly wanting the last word, then turned and walked back to her Mercedes. But before she got in, she pivoted back. 30 days, Mrs. Morales. The bench goes, one way or another." She drove off, tires crunching on gravel, and I stood there thinking about how some people mistake patience for weakness right up until the moment they learn otherwise. I pulled out my phone, texted Claudia. "Just had another visit. All recorded. Pattern is clear." Her response came fast. "Want me to run interference?" "Not yet. Let her keep digging." "Your call, boss. But this is getting ugly. It's gonna get uglier. Trust the process." I spent the afternoon reviewing the footage. Crystal clear, Veronica trespassing, making threats, using her phone to record selectively while my cameras captured everything. She was so focused on building her case, she didn't notice she was building mine. Friday evening, Sophie came over for dinner. She'd been avoiding the topic all week, focusing on wedding plans and baby preparations. But I could see the stress in her shoulders, the way she rubbed her belly unconsciously, the tightness around her eyes. We were halfway through chicken and salad when she finally brought it up. "Mom, maybe you should just remove it, the bench, just for now, until after the wedding. We can put it back later." Her voice was small, hopeful, the voice of someone trying to solve a problem by giving in to unreasonable demands because fighting seemed harder. I set down my fork. "You want me to give her what she wants?" It wasn't a question. "I want you to have peace. I want to stop worrying about this. I want my wedding to happen without this drama hanging over everything." She was crying now, hormones and stress and fear all mixing together. "What happens after the wedding when I put it back?" "She'll just demand it be removed again. And we'll be right back here." "So what? You fight forever? Let this woman control your whole life?" I reached across the table, took her hand. "Mia, if I give in now, I'm teaching that baby growing inside you that bullies win when you get tired of fighting them. Is that the lesson you want your child to learn?" Sophie pulled her hand back, wiped her eyes angrily. "I want my child to have a grandmother who's not stressed and fighting and dealing with this constant harassment. I want you to be happy. I want us to be happy. And we will be on the other side of this when it's done right." She stood up, paced to the window, looked out at the garden where the bench sat solid and permanent in the fading light. Dad would hate this. He'd hate you being attacked. He'd hate me crying over it. He'd want you to be okay. Your father would want me to do what's right. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She turned back to me, and I saw Carlos in her face, the stubborn set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes that wouldn't quite go out even through the tears. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that when this is over, you'll still be you. Not harder, not meaner, just you. I stood, crossed to her, pulled her into my arms. I promise. Your father made me promise the same thing the day before he died. Stay soft where it matters, he said. Stay hard where you have to. Know the difference. We stood there in the kitchen, mother and daughter, and I felt her relax against me. The baby kicked between us, a flutter of movement that made us both laugh through the tears. That's your grandfather, I told her belly, telling us to get it together. Saturday morning, the neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Maggie called me at 7, voice tight with controlled fury. You need to see this. She read me the post Veronica had made. Subject line, safety alert for Sycamore Lane residents. It went on for 3 paragraphs. Described a homeowner who had become increasingly hostile and aggressive. Referenced the HOA meeting where I had publicly attacked the board, claimed multiple neighbors had expressed fear and concern, suggested that someone displaying such emotional instability might pose a danger to the community. She never used my name, didn't have to. Everyone knew who she meant. The comments were already piling up, some supportive of Veronica, some questioning the narrative, some openly naming me and debating whether a grieving widow was really a threat to neighborhood safety. How many people are on that group? Maggie's sigh was heavy. 247. Pretty much every household in the subdivision. So she just told everyone in the neighborhood that I'm dangerous. That's the generous interpretation. The ungenerous one is she's building a case to claim she feared for her safety when she called the cops. I went cold. You think she's going to call the police? I think she's creating the paper trail to justify it when she does. Claudia called 10 minutes later. She'd seen the post too. One of her deputies lived in the neighborhood, had screenshot it and sent it up the chain. Boss, this is witness tampering. She's poisoning the jury pool before there's even a trial. There won't be a trial. This is civil, not criminal. Not yet. But the way she's escalating, it's heading somewhere. You need to be careful. I'm being careful. I'm documenting everything. Diana, I'm serious. This woman is building towards something. And when it happens, you need to be ready. Her use of my first name instead of boss or sheriff got my attention. Claudia didn't break professional distance unless something was really wrong. What do you know that I don't? I pulled her file, her history, before she moved here. And she's done this twice before in other counties. Same pattern. Targets someone, escalates harassment, then claims she was threatened and files a police report. The target gets arrested on her word. Even when charges are dropped later, the damage is done. They usually sell and leave. My stomach dropped. Has anyone ever fought back? One guy tried. She got a restraining order against him. He violated it accidentally, ran into her at the grocery store. Went to jail for 30 days, lost his job, marriage fell apart. So her playbook is to harass someone until they react, then use their reaction to destroy them. Exactly. Which is why you cannot react, no matter what she does, no matter how far she pushes. I'm not going to react. Good. Because I have the feeling the push is coming soon. It came Sunday morning. I was in the garden, same as always, tending roses, drinking coffee, talking to Carlos like he could hear me, telling him about Sophie's wedding plans, about the grandbaby, about how much I missed him, and how hard this was, and how I wished he was here to tell me what to do. Veronica's Mercedes pulled up, but this time she wasn't alone. She had a photographer with her, professional camera, serious equipment, someone she was clearly paying to document this. I stood slowly, brushed dirt from my gloves, and waited. She came up the driveway, heels clicking, photographer trailing behind, stopped at the property line this time. Legal, careful. Mrs. Morales, I'm here for a final inspection before the 30-day deadline. You're 10 days early. I'm being thorough. The photographer started shooting. The bench, the garden, me, wide shots and close-ups, building a visual record. You need my permission to photograph me on my property. I'm photographing the violation. You happen to be in frame. Sophistry. But legal sophistry. She'd done her homework. I could have gone inside, removed myself from the situation. But something in her expression told me that's what she wanted. To show me retreating. to paint me as uncooperative. So I stayed, kept gardening, ignored them both. She started narrating for the photographer. Note the continued presence of the unauthorized structure. Note the homeowner's refusal to engage with the board's legitimate oversight. I kept my mouth shut. Didn't correct her lies, let her perform. Then Sophie's car pulled into the driveway behind Veronica's Mercedes. My daughter got out, saw the photographer, saw Veronica, and I watched her face go through confusion to understanding to fury in about 3 seconds. What the hell is this? Her voice was loud, protective, exactly what a pregnant daughter feeling defensive would sound like. Veronica turned, smiled. HOA business. You must be the daughter. Get off my mother's property. We're documenting a violation. You're harassing a widow, there's a difference. Sophie was walking toward them now, and I saw what was about to happen a split second before it did. Veronica stepped back, stumbled slightly. Not real, but theatrical. Like Sophie had pushed her even though my daughter was still 5 feet away. And Veronica's hand went to her phone. "Don't you dare," Sophie said. But Veronica was already dialing. I moved then, fast, put myself between my daughter and Veronica, hands visible, voice calm. "Sophie, stop, go inside." "Mom, she's calling the cops on us for standing in our own yard." "I know, let her. Go inside." Sophie looked at me, saw something in my face that made her listen. She turned and walked to the house, slammed the door hard enough to rattle windows. Veronica was talking into her phone now, voice shaking, performative fear. "Yes, I need police. I'm at 247 Sycamore Lane. I've been threatened, assaulted. 2 women, the homeowner and her daughter. They're both extremely aggressive. I'm afraid for my safety." The photographer kept shooting, getting it all. The call, my face, the whole scene. I stood completely still. Didn't speak, didn't move. Let my security cameras capture everything while Veronica painted her fiction for dispatch. When she hung up, she looked at me with triumph in her eyes. "The police are coming. Finally, you'll face consequences for your behavior." I didn't respond, just stood there, calm, patient, waiting. What she didn't know, couldn't have known, was that the radio clipped to my belt under my jacket had been on the whole time, transmitting on the sheriff's frequency. And I just heard dispatch route the call. "Unit 7 and Unit 12, respond to 247 Sycamore Lane, reported assault in progress." Martinez's voice came back. "Unit 7 responding ETA 4 minutes. And then quieter, a question directed at dispatch. "Can you confirm the address? That's Sheriff Morales' residence." The dispatcher's pause was audible even over the radio. "Confirmed. 247 Sycamore Lane. Caller reports assault by homeowner." Another pause, longer. "Sheriff Morales, are you 1076? 1076. Radio code for at home." I reached under my jacket, keyed the radio. "Affirmative. At residence. Situation is under control. Respond per standard protocol." My voice was calm, professional, the voice I used on duty. Veronica's face went confused. She'd heard my voice twice, once in person and once from somewhere else. Her eyes tracked to my belt where the radio was clipped. Do you have a police radio?" Her confidence flickered, just for a second, but I saw it. I didn't answer, just waited. The sirens were audible now, getting closer. "Unit 7 on scene." Martinez's voice over radio, then his patrol car turning the corner. He pulled into my driveway, got out, and his eyes met mine for just a moment. Recognition, understanding, concern. Deputy Foster pulled in behind him. She was older, more experienced, and I watched her assess the scene in 3 seconds flat. Photographer with expensive camera. Woman in designer clothes looking agitated. Me standing calm in gardening gloves. "Ma'am, I'm Deputy Martinez. You called about an assault?" He addressed Veronica, professional and neutral. "Yes, these women attacked me. The homeowner and her daughter, they threatened me, pushed me. I want them arrested." Her voice had gotten louder, more shrill, the performance ramping up now that her audience had arrived. "Can you show me where you were pushed?" Veronica pointed vaguely at the driveway. "Right there." The daughter came at me. The mother blocked me in. I was terrified. Foster had her notebook out. "Did anyone witness this?" The photographer, he saw everything. Foster looked at the photographer. "Sir, did you see physical contact between these women?" The photographer, clearly uncomfortable now, shook his head. "I saw arguing, raised voices, no one touched anyone." Veronica's face flushed. "He's lying, or he wasn't paying attention. I was assaulted." Martinez looked at me. "Ma'am, did you have physical contact with this woman?" "Number 1, I did not." "Did your daughter?" "No, my daughter arrived. There was a verbal exchange. She went inside. No one touched anyone." Veronica was practically vibrating with fury now. You're going to believe her? Just like that? Without investigating? We're investigating right now, ma'am. Do you have any injuries? My arm. She grabbed my arm. Can I see? Veronica pushed up her sleeve. Unmarked skin, perfect and pale. I don't see any marks, ma'am. They'll show up later. Bruises take time. Foster and Martinez exchanged a look. I'd seen that look 1,000 times. The look that said this call was bullshit, and everyone knew it. Ma'am, do you have any other evidence of assault? Video? Other witnesses? The security cameras? Check them. They'll show everything. Foster looked at me. Ma'am, do you have security footage? I do. You're welcome to review it. We went inside. All of us. Sophie was in the kitchen, arms crossed, radiating protective fury. I sent her a look that said, stay quiet and let me handle this. The footage played on my laptop. Crystal clear. Wide angle showing the entire driveway. Veronica arriving with photographer. Me gardening. Sophie's arrival. The conversation, every word captured by audio. The moment Veronica stepped back on her own, creating the illusion of being pushed. Her calling 911, describing an assault that never happened. The deputies watched in silence. When it ended, Martinez turned to Veronica. Ma'am, this footage shows no assault, no physical contact. You stepped backward on your own. It's taken out of context. There is no context where this constitutes assault. Foster closed her notebook. Ma'am, filing a false police report is a crime. We're going to have to issue you a warning. Veronica's face went from flushed to pale. A warning? I'm the victim here. The evidence doesn't support that. You're protecting her. You work for her. This is corruption. She was shouting now, pointing at me, at the deputies, at the laptop like it had betrayed her. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down. Martinez's voice was still professional, but with an edge now. Don't tell me to calm down. I know corruption when I see it. Who is this woman? Why are you covering for her? She was spiraling, losing control, and the deputies were documenting every word. Foster stepped in. Ma'am, we need you to step outside. They escorted her to the driveway, and I could hear her still shouting through the windows about injustice, about corruption, about how she would call the sheriff himself and report this misconduct. Sophie looked at me. Mom, are you going to tell her? Not yet. Why not? Just end this. Because ending it now teaches the wrong lesson. It makes it about my position instead of about the truth. The deputies came back inside. Martinez looked apologetic. Sheriff, I'm sorry about this. Don't apologize. You handled it correctly. She's going to file a complaint. Against us. Against you. Let her. It'll be one more piece of evidence. Foster shook her head. For what it's worth, this is the cleanest false report I've ever seen. She built the whole narrative and documented her own lie. People get comfortable in their patterns. They stop being careful. After they left, after Veronica's Mercedes had peeled out of the driveway, after the photographer had slunk away looking embarrassed, Sophie turned to me. That was insane. That was escalation. And it's going to get worse. How much worse? I don't know, but she just made a false police report on camera. That's criminal, and she doesn't even realize it yet. Monday morning, Claudia was waiting in my office before I arrived. I heard about yesterday. Of course you did. Martinez filed the report, flagged it for special attention. Body cam footage is already logged. Good. Diana, this woman called 911 on you, the actual sheriff, and she still doesn't know. I know. When are you going to tell her? When it matters. When the timing is right. When it'll mean something beyond just winning an argument. Claudia leaned back in her chair. You're playing a longer game than I would. Carlos taught me that short-term victories don't always solve long-term problems. He was a wise man. He was. And he's still teaching me. That evening, the neighborhood Facebook group caught fire again. Someone had posted about the police being called. Rumors flying, theories multiplying. Some people defending Veronica, some questioning her, some just hungry for drama. Maggie called. It's getting ugly out here. I know. Half the neighborhood thinks you're dangerous. The other half thinks Veronica's crazy. What's your read on the split? Honestly, 60-40 in your favor. But that 40% who believe her, they're loud. Let them be loud. Truth doesn't need volume. God, you sound like Carlos. Everyone keeps saying that. 'Cause it's true. He'd be proud of you, mija. I hope so. The next day, a petition appeared. 73 signatures, calling for the HOA board to take stronger action, describing me as a threat to community safety, demanding immediate enforcement. Sophie saw it and called me in tears. They're trying to destroy you. They're trying to bully me. There's a difference. How can you be so calm? Because panic is what they want. Fear is how they win. I won't give them either. Thursday, the certified letter arrived. Emergency HOA meeting. Mandatory attendance. Agenda. Vote to declare my property a community hazard and invoke emergency powers to remove the violation immediately. Veronica was going nuclear. I called Claudia. Emergency meeting tonight. She's pushing for immediate removal. Want backup? Not official, but if you happen to be in the neighborhood, I'll be in the neighborhood. The community center was packed that evening. 200 people at least. Standing room only. Cameras from the local news station. This had become a spectacle. I arrived alone. Maggie saved me a seat near the back. Sophie had wanted to come, but I told her no. This could get ugly, and I didn't want her stressed. Veronica stood at the front, laptop and projector ready, flanked by her board members, who looked increasingly uncomfortable with the circus this had become. The meeting started with procedure, but everyone was just waiting for the main event. Finally it came. Agenda item 4, emergency enforcement action regarding 247 Sycamore Lane. Veronica pulled up her presentation. Photos of my property, close-ups of the bench, screenshots of our confrontations, carefully edited to remove context. This homeowner has demonstrated repeated hostility toward legitimate HOA oversight. She has threatened board members, called the police on community volunteers, created an environment of fear and intimidation. It was masterful fiction. Every fact twisted just enough to sound true while being fundamentally false. She played audio clips, my voice saying I wouldn't remove the bench, my daughter telling her to get off our property, all presented as evidence of aggression. The room was wrapped. This was better than television. I sat quietly, letting her perform, watching the crowd, seeing who nodded, who looked skeptical, who was buying the narrative. Then Veronica played her trump card. Sunday, this homeowner and her daughter physically assaulted me on my property. Murmurs through the crowd. I called the police. They responded. And despite clear evidence of assault, they refused to make an arrest. Why? Because this woman has connections, friends in the sheriff's department who protect her. The murmurs got louder. This is corruption, this is abuse of power, and it cannot stand. She was building to her climax. I move that we invoke emergency powers, remove the violation immediately, and begin proceedings to force sale of the property for the safety of this community. The room erupted, people shouting, arguing, the board members looking like they wanted to run, and then a voice cut through the chaos. I'd like to address these allegations. Every head turned. Claudia Ruiz stood in the middle of the crowd, badge visible on her belt, chief deputy uniform making her authority unmistakable. Veronica's face went confused. This is a private HOA meeting. It's a public meeting. And you just accused my department of corruption. I'm here to set the record straight. Claudia walked to the front, calm and professional, and absolutely in command. My name is Chief Deputy Claudia Ruiz. I oversee operations for the sheriff's department, and I've reviewed the incident you referenced. She pulled out her tablet, connected it to the projector, pulled up the body cam footage. This is what actually happened Sunday. The footage played, unedited, complete. Every moment of Veronica's performance. Her fake stumble, her theatrical 911 call, the deputy's professional response, the security camera evidence. The room went silent as a tomb. When it ended, Claudia turned to Veronica. You filed a false police report. You lied about assault. You created a narrative designed to weaponize law enforcement against a homeowner who refused your demands. Veronica's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Claudia continued. You want to know why no arrest was made? Because no crime occurred, except the one you committed by making that call. Someone in the crowd asked the question everyone was thinking. So who is Diana Morales? Why does she have this kind of protection? Claudia looked at me. I gave the smallest nod. Not yet. Claudia turned back to the crowd. Diana Morales is a law-abiding homeowner with the same rights as everyone in this room. The fact that she documented everything and had evidence of her innocence isn't corruption. It's preparation. Maybe you should ask yourselves why someone felt the need to install security cameras in the first place. The meeting devolved quickly from order into damage control, as the board realized they were being asked to enforce discipline based on a claim already dismissed by law enforcement. And Veronica reacted poorly, raising her voice, accusing the board of betrayal and threatening to take the issue public, which was ironic given how quickly public scrutiny would unravel her story. After the meeting ended, she cornered me in the parking lot, insisting this was not over, and that she had friends in high places, and that she would make sure I regretted embarrassing her. I kept walking, didn't respond, didn't need to, because she was right about one thing. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. But what she didn't know yet was that the worst was still to come. And it would arrive not from me, but from someone she thought she controlled completely. The vandalism happened Tuesday night. My security system alerted me at 1:47 in the morning. Motion detected in the backyard. Multiple cameras triggered. I grabbed my phone, pulled up the live feed, and felt my blood go cold. Someone was spray painting Carlos's bench, a figure in dark clothes, hood up, moving quickly. Red paint arcing across the wood in violent slashes, obscuring his name, defacing the memorial he'd built with dying hands. I was out the door in 30 seconds. No weapon, no backup, just fury and the kind of protective rage that makes you forget to be careful. The figure heard me coming, turned, started to run. I was faster. Tackled him at the fence line, heard the air go out of him as we hit the ground, pinned him, ripped back the hood, and found myself looking at a kid, 17, maybe 18. Terrified eyes, red paint on his hands and clothes, backpack spilling spray cans across the lawn. Please don't call the cops. Please. My mom made me do it. She said if I didn't help her, you'd ruin everything. I stayed on top of him, breathing hard, trying to control the shaking in my hands. What's your name? James Sterling, Veronica's son. The world shifted. This wasn't random vandalism. This was a mother using her child as a weapon, manipulating him into committing crimes because she couldn't touch me directly anymore. I pulled out my phone, called it in, not my personal line. Official dispatch, let the system handle it. Martinez and Foster responded. Found us in the backyard. James still on the ground, covered in paint, crying now. Me standing over him with the kind of cold fury that makes deputies nervous. Sheriff, you okay? I'm fine. He's not under arrest. He's a victim. Ma'am. His mother coerced him, made him do this. He's 17. She used him as a weapon because she can't get to me directly. I looked down at James, saw Sophie in him, saw what desperation could make people do, saw a kid caught between a manipulative parent and consequences he didn't understand. Martinez read him his rights anyway. Procedure. But I could see the boy was more scared of his mother than of us. Foster took photos, the bench, the paint, James's hands, building evidence not just of vandalism but of parental coercion. I want a full report on this. And I want Child Protective Services contacted. This is abuse. Sheriff, are you pressing charges? I looked at Carlos's bench, at the red paint dripping over his name like blood, at the memorial defaced by a child whose mother had weaponized him. No charges against James, but I want his mother investigated for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And for using him to harass me. James looked up at me, disbelief on his face. You're not arresting me? You're a victim here, not a criminal. But your mother is going to answer for this. They took him to the station, called his father, who had partial custody and apparently lived across town. The man showed up looking disgusted and exhausted. I'm sorry, he told me. His mother has problems. I've been trying to protect him, but she has visitation rights. She used those rights to turn him into a criminal. I know, I'll file for full custody. This is the last straw. After everyone left, I stood alone in the backyard looking at the vandalized bench. The paint was still wet, dripping, destroying something irreplaceable. Maggie appeared at the fence. I heard the sirens. What happened? I told her. Watched her face go through shock to fury to heartbreak. That boy, she used her own son. She's desperate, and desperate people don't care who they hurt. Can you fix it, the bench? I think so. The paint is water-based. If I work fast, I can clean most of it before it sets. We spent the next 2 hours scrubbing. 2 widows at 3 in the morning, using rags and solvent and determination to save a memorial from someone's cruelty. By dawn, the bench was clean. Not perfect. You could still see shadows where the paint had been. But Carlos's name was visible again, the wood intact. Maggie made coffee. We sat on the bench as the sun came up. She's destroyed herself now, you know. Using her son like that. The neighborhood will turn on her completely. I don't care about the neighborhood turning. I care about that boy. About what she did to him. You showed him mercy when you could have destroyed him. He didn't deserve destruction. He deserved protection. From her. That's the difference between you and Veronica. She sees people as tools. You see them as humans. I see them as someone's child. James is somebody's son. Sophie's age. Could have been Sophie if circumstances were different. We sat in silence as the neighborhood woke up. As people started their days unaware that everything had changed in the dark. Veronica had crossed a line she couldn't uncross, and now the consequences would be unavoidable. Not because I wanted revenge, but because protecting children matters more than protecting adults who harm them. And that was a lesson she was about to learn the hard way. The formal complaint arrived on Monday morning via certified mail. 3 copies, one addressed to the County Board of Supervisors, one to the District Attorney, one to the Sheriff's Department Internal Affairs Division, all claiming that Diana Morales had corruptly influenced law enforcement, weaponized her connections to intimidate a civilian, and abused her position to evade accountability for assault. The irony was so perfect it almost made me laugh. Veronica Sterling had just filed an official complaint with the county sheriff's office, alleging that someone with sheriff's department connections was abusing their power. And that someone was the county sheriff herself. She was literally asking me to investigate myself without having any idea that's what she was doing. I sat in my office, reading through the allegations, and felt that cold professional clarity that comes when a situation crosses from personal to procedural. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This was about someone attempting to weaponize the justice system against an elected official. That made it institutional. That made it my responsibility to handle correctly not just for me, but for every person who would come after. Claudia knocked and entered without waiting for permission. Chief deputies earned that right. You've seen it. She meant the complaint. Of course she meant the complaint. By now, everyone in the department had probably seen it or heard about it. I've seen it. What do you want to do? I looked at her across my desk. Claudia Ruiz, 45 years old, 15 years with the department, chief deputy for 3, the woman I'd mentored through detective training, the closest thing I had to a sister in this job. She knew me well enough to know I was thinking 3 steps ahead. I want to recuse myself completely. Request the state attorney general assign an independent investigator. Make this as clean and transparent as possible. Claudia's eyebrows rose. You're going to let the state investigate you based on a complaint filed by someone who doesn't even know who you are? Yes. That could take weeks, months even. And your name will be out there the whole time. Better than the alternative. If I squash this using my position, she wins a different way. She gets to claim I abused power to protect myself. Claudia sat down, studied my face. You're really going to see this through. The whole process. Even knowing it'll be public and ugly. Especially knowing that. Because when it's done, no one can claim special treatment. No one can say the system bent for me. What about Sophie? The wedding is in 4 months. This is going to be hanging over everything. Sophie will understand. Carlos taught her that doing things right matters more than doing them fast. Claudia smiled, sad and proud at the same time. He really did raise her well, didn't he? We both did. And now she gets to see if the lesson stuck. I drafted my recusal letter that afternoon. Formal, precise, requesting that the state attorney general appoint an independent investigator to review all allegations impartially. Copied the county board of supervisors. Copied the DA. Made it completely transparent that I was stepping aside from any involvement in my own case. The news leaked by Tuesday morning. Local reporter called my office. Young guy, ambitious, smelling a story bigger than the usual rural crime beat. Sheriff Morales, can you comment on the complaint filed against you alleging abuse of power? I'm aware of the complaint. I've recused myself and requested an independent investigation. Beyond that, no comment while the review is pending. But you deny the allegations? The investigation will address all allegations thoroughly. That's all I'm saying. Can you tell me about your relationship with Veronica Sterling? No relationship. She's a constituent with concerns. The process will address those concerns. He tried 3 more angles. I gave him variations of the same answer. Professional, neutral, refusing to be drawn into specifics. The story ran Wednesday. Front page of the local paper. County sheriff faces investigation over alleged abuse of power. The article was surprisingly balanced, presented the complaint, my recusal, and the pending investigation without editorializing. But the headline alone was enough to set social media on fire. By Wednesday evening, I had 17 messages from reporters, 12 from citizens demanding answers, 23 from concerned colleagues, and 1 from Sophie that just said, "Call me now, Mom, please." I called. She was crying before I even said hello. Mom, it's everywhere. The wedding venue called. They're concerned about negative publicity. My work is asking questions. James's parents saw the news and they're worried. This is ruining everything. I took a breath, found my calm center, the place Carlos had taught me to access when everything was chaos. Mia, listen to me. This is going to get worse before it gets better. The investigation will take time. There will be more stories, more questions, more pressure. Then what do? We do what we've always done. Tell the truth, trust the process, hold our heads up, and remember that temporary noise doesn't change permanent facts. She was quiet for a moment. I could hear her breathing, steadying herself. Dad would say the same thing. He would. Okay, I can do this. We can do this. That's my girl. But Mom, when this is over, when they realize who you are and what she tried to do, I want to be there when she finds out. You might get your wish. Thursday morning, the state attorney general's office called. They were assigning special investigator Rebecca Torres, former FBI, 20 years experience, reputation for being thorough, fair, and completely immune to political pressure. Exactly what this situation needed. Torres called me that afternoon to schedule a formal interview. Her voice was professional, measured, the sound of someone who'd conducted 1,000 interviews and knew exactly how to read people through tone and word choice. Sheriff Morales, I want to be clear about my role here. I work for the people of California, not for any individual or office. My job is to find facts and present them without bias. I understand and appreciate that. I'll be interviewing you first, then Ms. Sterling, then any relevant witnesses. Full transparency, everything documented. Nothing off the record. That's exactly what I want. Most sheriffs in your position would fight this. Try to control the narrative. You're doing the opposite. Why? Because the truth doesn't need control. It just needs time and space to be found. Torres was quiet for a moment. Your husband was Carlos Morales. He died 2 years ago. Heart attack at 54. You scattered his ashes in the garden where this bench now sits. She'd done her homework. That's correct. And you haven't remarried, haven't removed your wedding ring. Still refer to him in present tense sometimes according to neighbors I've spoken with. Also correct. Is that relevant? It might be. Ms. Sterling claims you're emotionally unstable due to unresolved grief, that you're clinging to the past in unhealthy ways. I felt the anger rise but kept my voice level. Grief doesn't follow a schedule, Investigator Torres. And memorializing someone you loved isn't instability. It's human. I agree, but I needed to hear you say it. She was testing me, seeing if I'd lose composure. I respected that. When can we schedule your formal interview? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Your office or neutral location. My office. I have nothing to hide. The interview lasted 3 hours. Torres was exactly as advertised. Thorough, fair, relentless in her pursuit of details. She walked through the entire timeline. First contact with Veronica, the violation notice, the HOA meetings, the 911 call, the vandalism, the complaint, every interaction documented and dissected. She asked hard questions. Did you ever identify yourself as sheriff during these interactions? No. Why not? Because my position wasn't relevant to the dispute. I was a homeowner with rights. My job title didn't change those rights or my responsibility to defend them appropriately. Some would argue you had a duty to disclose. Some would be wrong. Citizens aren't required to announce their professions to avoid false accusations. If they were, the burden would always fall on the innocent to prevent the guilty from claiming ignorance. Torres made a note. Ms. Sterling claims you used your connections to intimidate responding deputies. I used my knowledge of procedure to ensure my rights were protected. The deputies didn't know who I was until after they'd already reviewed evidence and determined no crime occurred. How do you know they didn't know? Body camera footage. It's time-stamped. You can see the moment Deputy Martinez recognizes my truck. After he's already taken statements. After he's already requested my security footage. His recognition didn't change his assessment. The evidence did. Torres pulled up the footage on her tablet, watched it twice. You're right. The timeline supports your version. It's not my version, it's what happened. She looked up from the screen. You understand that maintaining this level of composure and documentation suggests either remarkable discipline or calculated manipulation? It suggests I'm a law enforcement professional who knows how to handle confrontation without escalating it. That's not manipulation, that's training. That's training you deliberately withheld from Ms. Sterling to gain advantage. Training. I withheld from Ms. Sterling to ensure the investigation of her false report was unimpeachable. If she'd known who I was, she could claim I'd influenced the outcome. This way, the evidence speaks for itself. Torres sat back, studied me with those cool professional eyes. You've thought this through very carefully. I've thought through how to protect the integrity of the system while protecting my rights. If that seems calculated, it's because I understand the stakes. which are, if I handle this wrong, I prove her right about abuse of power. If I handle it right, I prove the system works even when the people inside it are the ones being tested. She made another note, then brought up something new. Tell me about the vandalism incident. Tuesday night, Ms. Sterling's son. I walked her through it. The alert, finding James, the paint, his confession about being coerced, my decision not to press charges against him. You didn't arrest him. He was 17. His mother manipulated him into committing a crime. He's a victim, not a criminal. Some would say you showed favoritism, gave him special treatment because you wanted to use it against his mother. I showed judgment, the same judgment I'd show for any minor being used as a weapon by a parent. If that benefits my case against Veronica, that's secondary to protecting a child from abuse. You filed a report recommending investigation into parental coercion. I did, because using your child to commit crimes on your behalf is abuse. And I'm a mandatory reporter. Torres pulled up photos of the vandalized bench, the paint, Carlos's name obscured. This must have been difficult, seeing your husband's memorial defaced. It was, but my emotional response doesn't change what happened. A child was coerced. That's the crime, not the vandalism. You're very disciplined about separating personal from professional. I have to be, that's the job. She closed her tablet. I'll be interviewing Ms. Sterling next. Is there anything you want me to know before I do? Just that I hope you ask her why she targeted a widow's memorial, and why she has a limited liability company that's purchased 4 properties from recently bereaved or divorced women in the last 3 years, all after HOA violations she personally initiated, and why she used her 17-year-old son to commit crimes when direct harassment failed. Torres's pen paused over her notepad. You've documented all of this. I slid a folder across my desk. Property records, sale prices, timeline of HOA violations, LLC ownership documents, Child Protective Services report on James, everything documented and sourced. Torres opened it, scanned the contents. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. You've been investigating her. I've been documenting facts. There's a difference. Sheriff Morales, if this complaint is part of a larger scheme, you should have brought this to law enforcement. I am law enforcement, and I'm bringing it to you. Now, while you're conducting an independent investigation that can't be tainted by claims, I used my position inappropriately. She closed the folder, held my gaze. You set this up, all of it. You let her file the complaint knowing it would trigger an investigation that would expose her entire operation. I let her make her own choices. I just made sure those choices were documented thoroughly enough that the truth would be undeniable when someone finally looked. Torres stood, gathered her materials. I don't know whether to admire your patience or question your methods. Question everything. That's your job. Mine is to trust you'll find the truth. After she left, I sat alone in my office for a long time, thinking about Carlos, about how he'd always said the best way to catch someone was to let them catch themselves. Give them enough rope and enough time and they'd tie their own knots. Veronica had been tying knots for 3 years, and now someone was finally going to examine them. Friday morning, Torres interviewed Veronica. I wasn't there, obviously, but Claudia had a friend in the AG's office who gave her a general sense of how it went. Veronica came prepared, binder full of documents, timeline of events from her perspective, character references, the whole performance. But Torres had done something Veronica didn't expect. She'd already interviewed 15 neighbors, pulled all the property records, reviewed 4 years of HOA meeting minutes, talked to the 3 women who'd sold their homes under pressure, interviewed James Sterling and his father, built a complete picture before Veronica ever walked in the room. When Veronica presented her narrative, Torres had questions she couldn't answer. Why does your LLC own property from former HOA violation targets? That's a separate business matter. Is it, though? Because the timeline shows violations, harassment, sales, and purchases within weeks of each other, multiple times. Correlation isn't causation. True. But pattern suggests intent, and I'm seeing a very clear pattern. Veronica apparently tried to pivot, claimed she was being persecuted for enforcing standards, that neighbors were lying because they resented authority, that the whole thing was a conspiracy orchestrated by someone with law enforcement connections. Torres asked who she thought was orchestrating it. Diana Morales, obviously. She has deputies in her pocket. How do you know she has deputies in her pocket? Because they responded to her immediately when I called 911. They dismissed my complaint. They threatened me with citations. They responded to a 911 call within standard time. They reviewed evidence, including security footage. They determined no crime occurred. That's not having someone in your pocket. That's following procedure. Then why didn't they arrest her? Because no assault happened. The footage proves that. Footage can be edited. 3 camera angles, wide coverage, timestamp verification. You're suggesting she edited multiple feeds perfectly? She has resources, connections. Torres apparently leaned forward at this point. Ms. Sterling, let's talk about your son, James. Veronica's confidence flickered. What about him? He was caught vandalizing Sheriff Morales' property, spray painting her late husband's memorial bench. That's his issue, not mine. He told deputies you coerced him, made him do it, threatened to cut him off from college funding if he refused. He's lying. He had text messages from you, explicit instructions on when to do it and what to write. Those are taken out of context. How is "do this tonight or I'm done paying your tuition" out of context? The interview apparently went downhill from there, Veronica growing more defensive, more erratic, accusing Torres of bias, demanding to know who Diana Morales really was and why everyone was protecting her. Torres asked the critical question, Ms. Sterling, why didn't you verify your allegations before filing charges? And Veronica said the words that would define everything that followed. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, she's going to regret ever crossing me. The interview ended shortly after. Torres had what she needed. Saturday, Sophie came over for wedding planning. We were supposed to be addressing seating charts and menu selections, but she couldn't focus. Mom, how long is this investigation going to take? Weeks probably, maybe longer. And the whole time people are going to think you abused your power. Some people, others will wait for facts. She pushed her seating chart away. I hate this. I hate that she's doing this to you. To us. Dad would be so angry. Your father would tell me to stay patient and let the system work. Same thing I'm telling you. But what if the system doesn't work? What if they believe her? Then we appeal. And keep appealing until someone listens to facts instead of narratives. Sophie looked at me across the kitchen table. My daughter, pregnant with my grandchild, about to get married, caught in the middle of something she never asked for. I'm scared, Mom. Of what? That this is going to break you. That you're being so strong and so patient and so careful that when it's over, you won't have anything left. I reached across, took her hand. Baby, I've already survived the worst thing that can happen. Losing your father. This is just noise. Loud noise, but still just noise. It doesn't feel like noise. It feels like our lives being torn apart. Our lives aren't our reputations. Our lives are this. You and me and that baby and the wedding in 4 months. That's real. The rest is just other people's opinions. She squeezed my hand. Dad used to say that. When the department politics got bad, other people's opinions are just weather. Wait long enough and it changes. Smart man. The smartest. And he chose you. So you must be pretty smart too. I smiled through the tightness in my throat. Smart enough to know when to hold on and when to let go. Right now I'm holding on. Sunday morning, the local TV news ran a segment. Investigator questions HOA president's motives in sheriff complaint. Someone had leaked elements of Torres's interview with Veronica. Not the whole thing, but enough to suggest there was more to the story than initial reports indicated. The phone call started immediately. Neighbors asking questions. Reporters wanting comments. Random citizens weighing in with opinions nobody asked for. I let it all go to voicemail. Stayed off social media. Focused on what I could control, which was very little. And that was the hardest part. Monday morning, Torres called. Sheriff, I need to inform you of a development. Ms. Sterling has filed an additional complaint, this time criminal charges, alleging stalking, harassment, intimidation, and conspiracy to deprive her of civil rights. The conspiracy charge was federal. That escalated everything. Where did she file? With your department, which means it has to be processed through normal channels. I felt the trap close. Veronica had found a way to force my own office to investigate me. I'll assign it to detectives, completely separate from my oversight. I've already coordinated with your chief deputy. Detective Rodriguez will handle it. He's aware of the sensitivity. Rodriguez was good, thorough, and by the book. Exactly who I'd have chosen if I'd been making the choice. This is going to be public, isn't it? It already is. She's scheduled a press conference for tomorrow. Claims she's bringing evidence of systematic corruption. Torres paused. Sheriff, I need to ask, are you prepared for what's coming? Because this is going to get significantly worse before my investigation concludes. I've been preparing for worse my whole career. This is just another version of it. With respect, this is different. This is personal. This is about your late husband's memorial and your daughter's stability and your own reputation. Those aren't just professional challenges. You're right, which is why I need to handle them professionally. Because if I don't, I prove her point. Torres was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this exactly right. But I also think you're human. And humans break under this kind of pressure. Then I guess we'll find out what I'm made of. Tuesday, Veronica held her press conference. County government building, local media invited. Statement prepared and distributed in advance. I watched it from my office, Claudia standing next to me, both of us silent as Veronica performed for the cameras. She wore black, somber, and serious, the outfit of someone bearing heavy truths. I'm here today to expose corruption at the highest levels of our county government. I filed a legitimate complaint about a dangerous homeowner. Instead of protecting me, the system has turned against me. Why? Because the homeowner in question has powerful connections. Connections that reach into the sheriff's department itself. She paused for effect. I've now learned that Diana Morales has been using her relationship with sheriff's deputies to intimidate and harass me, to weaponize law enforcement against a citizen exercising her lawful authority. This is corruption. This is abuse of power, and I will not be silenced. A reporter asked the obvious question. Ms. Sterling, can you provide evidence of these connections? I have documentation of multiple instances where deputies responded to her calls immediately, where they dismissed my legitimate complaints, where they threatened me with citations for exercising my rights. All of this will be presented to federal authorities. Another reporter. What do you want to happen? I want a full investigation. I want accountability. I want the truth about who Diana Morales really is and what she's been hiding. Claudia turned off the monitor. Boss, this is going to force your hand. You can't let this narrative stand. Not yet. She's calling for federal investigation. If the FBI gets involved before Torres finishes, this becomes a completely different situation. Then Torres needs to work faster. That could take weeks. Then it takes weeks. Claudia turned to face me fully. Diana, you need to tell her. You need to go on record. You need to stop protecting the process and start protecting yourself. The process protects me better than any statement I could make. The process is letting her control the narrative. Let her. Because when the truth comes out, the contrast between her accusations and reality will be devastating. But only if I haven't already burned credibility defending myself. Claudia shook her head. Carlos would have told you the same thing I'm telling you. There's being patient and there's being a martyr. Know the difference. Carlos would have told me to trust that truth outlasts lies. I'm trusting. Wednesday morning, Detective Rodriguez came to my office. Formal interview about the criminal complaint. I answered every question, provided every document, cooperated completely. It felt surreal. Being investigated by my own department for crimes I didn't commit based on complaints from someone who didn't know I was the person ultimately responsible for that department. Thursday, Torres called with an update. I've completed interviews with all relevant parties, reviewed all documentation. I'm ready to present preliminary findings to the AG. How long until they're public? Could be days, could be weeks. They'll want to review thoroughly before releasing anything. And in the meantime, you continue to be investigated by your own detectives based on allegations that are demonstrably false, but can't be dismissed until my report is official. The system working as intended. If by intended you mean slowly and frustratingly, then yes. I meant designed to be thorough enough that the outcome can't be questioned. Torres laughed, short and sharp. Sheriff Morales, I've investigated a lot of people in my career. Most of them fought me every step of the way. You've done the opposite. You've cooperated so completely I almost don't trust it. You think I'm setting a trap. I think you understand something about process that most people don't. That transparency is the best defense. That documentation beats denial. That patience wins long games. My husband taught me that. He was in law enforcement for 30 years. He understood how systems work and how they break and which behaviors strengthen them versus weaken them. He sounds like he was a good man. The best. And I'm trying to honor what he taught me by doing this right even when it's hard. Friday afternoon, everything changed. Torres called. Sheriff, I need to inform you that Ms. Sterling's attorney has requested an emergency meeting with my office. They're claiming new evidence that fundamentally changes the investigation. What kind of evidence? They won't say until the meeting, but they're suggesting it proves you've been concealing your identity and manipulating the investigation from the beginning. I felt my pulse quicken. this was it, the moment when all the pieces came together. When's the meeting? Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. They've requested you be present. Will I be? That's your choice, but I'd recommend it. If we're going to end this, better to end it completely. I'll be there. That evening, I sat on Carlos's bench in the gathering dark, ran my hands over the wood he'd sanded smooth, traced his name carved into the backrest, still visible despite the shadow of where James's paint had been, felt the solid permanence of something built to last. Tomorrow, Veronica Sterling would walk into a room thinking she'd finally found the evidence to destroy me, thinking she'd uncovered the corruption she'd been alleging, thinking she'd won. And instead, she was going to learn exactly who she'd been fighting. Not because I'd announced it to win an argument, not because I'd used my position to intimidate her, but because an independent investigation had followed every thread and arrived at the truth organically, the way it was supposed to work. The way Carlos had taught me it had to work if it was going to mean anything. Sophie called as the last light faded from the sky. Mom, Maggie told me about the meeting tomorrow. Are you okay? I'm ready. That's not the same thing as okay. No, but it's close enough. She was quiet for a moment. When she finds out who you are, what are you going to do? Same thing I've been doing. Let the facts speak for themselves. You're not going to gloat? Not even a little? Your father used to say that dignity and victory matters more than the victory itself. I'm trying to remember that. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. I sat alone in the dark for another hour, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. Veronica's cruelty, my restraint, the investigation, the truth waiting to finally emerge. And I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Not peace exactly, but the kind of calm that comes from knowing you've done everything right, and now you just have to trust that right wins. Tomorrow, Veronica would learn that the widow she'd tried to destroy was the sheriff she'd been demanding investigate herself. And the irony would be perfect. But the lesson would be even better. That power not announced is still power. That patience beats performance. And that sometimes the best way to defeat someone is to let them defeat themselves, while you simply watch and document and wait for truth to arrive in its own time. Carlos would have been proud. I was proud. And tomorrow, finally, everyone would understand why. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear, the kind of autumn day California does best. Crisp air, golden light, everything sharp and defined. I dressed in my uniform for the first time in this entire ordeal. Badge polished, brass gleaming, boots shined to mirror finish. Not because I needed the armor, but because when you walk into the room where truth finally arrives, you do it representing everything you stand for. Claudia picked me up at 8:30. We drove to the Attorney General's regional office in silence. She knew what this meant. Knew that today would either vindicate everything I'd done or expose flaws in my judgment. Either way, the waiting was over. The AG's office was modern glass and steel, conference room on the 3rd floor, windows overlooking the valley. Everything designed to feel transparent and official. Rebecca Torres was already there, setting up her laptop and organizing files. She looked up when we entered. Sheriff Morales, Chief Deputy Ruiz, thank you for coming. Her tone was professional, but I caught something else underneath. Anticipation, maybe, or the satisfaction of someone who'd found all the pieces and was ready to show how they fit together. Ms. Sterling and her attorney should be here within 10 minutes. Before they arrive, I want to walk you through what I've found. She pulled up a presentation on the screen. Timeline, property records, interview transcripts, financial documents. Everything documented and sourced. Over the past 3 weeks, I've conducted 42 interviews, reviewed 18 months of HOA records, examined property transactions going back 4 years, analyzed body camera footage, security recordings, and written correspondence. And I've found a pattern. She clicked through slides, each one building the case. Veronica Sterling has targeted 7 homeowners in the past 4 years, all women, all recently widowed, divorced, or single, all with properties valued above neighborhood median. The pattern is consistent: HOA violation notice, escalating harassment, pressure to sell, purchase by Sterling Properties, LLC, at below market value, resale within 6 months at significant profit. Claudia leaned forward. That's wire fraud, real estate fraud, possibly RICO if she coordinated with others. Torres nodded. The financial analysis shows $280,000 in profits, but the human cost is harder to quantify. 3 women developed anxiety disorders. 1 lost her business due to legal fees. 2 are still in therapy. She pulled up another slide. My case. Timeline of every interaction. Sheriff Morales' case fits the pattern perfectly. Recent widow, valuable property. Memorial structure that could be weaponized as a violation. The only difference is she didn't fold under pressure. Because she knew her rights, Claudia said. Because she is law enforcement, Torres corrected. Which brings us to the complaint. She pulled up Veronica's allegations. Ms. Sterling claims Sheriff Morales abused her position to intimidate and harass. The evidence shows the opposite. Sheriff Morales never identified herself, never used her authority. In fact, she went to extraordinary lengths to ensure her position didn't influence the outcome. She recused herself from this investigation, requested independent review, cooperated fully. She did everything right. Torres looked at me directly, which is why this meeting is going to be difficult. Because Ms. Sterling is arriving with what she believes is proof of corruption. She's going to present her evidence, and then I'm going to present mine. And the contrast is going to be devastating. What evidence does she think she has? Torres smiled thinly. She's discovered you're the county sheriff. Apparently, one of her supporters did research and connected the dots. She thinks she's uncovered the smoking gun, that you've been hiding your identity to manipulate the investigation. I felt my pulse steady. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for since that first violation notice landed on my doorstep. How do you want to handle this? Let her present first. Let her make her case. Then show her what I found. Let the facts speak. A knock at the door. Torres's assistant stepped in. Ms. Sterling and her attorney are here. Send them in. Veronica entered like she owned the place. Navy suit, expensive jewelry, hair and makeup perfect. Her attorney followed. Older man, gray suit, expensive briefcase. The kind of lawyer who billed by the quarter hour and made sure you knew it. She saw me in uniform and her step faltered, just for a second. But I caught it. Why is she here? This is supposed to be about her, not with her. Her attorney put a hand on her arm. Ms. Sterling, Investigator Torres has the right to conduct these proceedings as she sees fit. Torres gestured to chairs across the conference table. Please sit. You said you had new evidence that would fundamentally change this investigation. I'd like to hear it. Veronica sat, pulled out her own folder, slid papers across the table with the confidence of someone revealing a winning hand. I know who she is. I know what she's been hiding. Diana Morales isn't just some homeowner with connections. She is the connection. She's the county sheriff. Torres didn't react, just waited. And you believe this changes the investigation how? It proves everything. She's been using her position from the beginning. The deputies who responded to my calls work for her. The detectives investigating my complaint report to her. This entire process has been rigged. Her attorney cleared his throat. What my client is saying is that there's an inherent conflict of interest. Sheriff Morales should have disclosed her position immediately. Her failure to do so constitutes deception at minimum, obstruction at worst. Torres made a note. Interesting theory. Sheriff Morales, would you like to respond? I looked across the table at Veronica, saw the triumph in her eyes, the certainty that she'd finally won. I'm not required to announce my profession to someone filing false HOA violations. My position as sheriff doesn't change my rights as a homeowner. And I didn't influence any investigation because I recused myself completely the moment you were assigned. That's a convenient excuse. Veronica's voice was rising, control slipping. It's documented fact. Every step of this process has been independent. You filed a complaint asking the sheriff's office to investigate corruption. I stepped aside and requested the state handle it. That's the opposite of obstruction. Her attorney tried to regain ground. Investigator Torres, surely you can see the optics here. A sheriff being investigated by the state at her own request. It looks like damage control. Torres closed her folder. It would, except that Sheriff Morales requested my involvement before she knew the full scope of what I'd find. Which brings me to my findings. She pulled up the presentation again, started with the property records. Ms. Sterling, can you explain why your LLC has purchased 7 properties from women you personally cited for HOA violations? That's business. Separate from HOA matters. Is it? Because the timeline suggests otherwise. Violation notice, harassment, forced sale, your purchase. All within months. 7 times. Veronica's face was flushing. I buy distressed properties. That's legal. It is. Unless the distress is created by your own actions. Then it's fraud. Torres clicked through more slides. Financial records, LLC filings, purchase agreements. You've profited $280,000 from these transactions. Properties bought 40% below market, sold at full value within months, and every single seller was a woman you targeted through the HOA. I didn't target anyone, I enforced standards. Then why only women? Why only recent widows and divorcees? Why always properties above median value? Veronica's attorney was reading the documents Torres had provided. His face was getting paler with each page. Ms. Sterling, I think we should pause this meeting and consult privately. No, I want this on record. She's trying to flip this around. Make me the criminal when she's the one who abused her power. Torres's voice went cold. What power did she abuse, Ms. Sterling? She never identified herself, never contacted deputies on her own behalf, never interfered with any investigation. She installed security cameras on her own property, documented your harassment, and when you filed a false police report, she let the system handle it. Where's the abuse? She should have told me who she was. Why? So you could change your behavior? That's admitting you knew your behavior was wrong. The logic trap closed. Veronica's face went from flush to pale. You're twisting everything. I'm presenting facts, which is more than you've done. Torres clicked to body camera footage from the 911 call, played it start to finish. Veronica's fake stumble, her theatrical performance, the deputy's professional response. You filed a false report, made claims of assault that never occurred, tried to weaponize emergency services against a homeowner who refused your demands. That's a crime, Ms. Sterling. I felt threatened. I had the right to call for help. You had the right to call if you were actually in danger. You weren't. You were frustrated that someone wasn't intimidated by your tactics, so you escalated. And you did it on camera. Veronica stood up, hands shaking. This is persecution. I'm the victim here. She manipulated everything to make me look bad. You made yourself look bad. Sheriff Morales just documented it. Torres stood as well. Game over. Ms. Sterling, I'm recommending criminal charges. Filing a false police report, real estate fraud, harassment. The district attorney will make the final determination, but the evidence is overwhelming. The room went silent. Veronica swaying slightly, her attorney gripping his briefcase like it might anchor him. You can't do this. You can't charge me. I was protecting my community. You were running a scheme, and you targeted the wrong person. Not because she was the sheriff, but because she was someone who knew how to document everything and had the patience to let you expose yourself. Veronica looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the moment understanding hit. Not just that she'd lost, but how completely she'd lost. That every move she'd made had been documented, every threat recorded, every lie captured and preserved. You knew. From the beginning, you knew I'd do this. I knew you'd continue doing what you'd been doing. I just made sure there was a complete record when you did. This is entrapment! Entrapment requires inducement. I didn't induce anything. You chose every action. I just chose to document them. Her attorney was packing his briefcase. Ms. Sterling, we're leaving, now. And you're not saying another word without me present. But Veronica wasn't done. She turned on me with pure venom. Your husband would be ashamed of you. Using his memory, his memorial, playing the grieving widow while you manipulated everyone. The room froze. Even her attorney went still. I stood slowly, kept my voice level but let the steel show through. My husband taught me that integrity matters more than winning. That doing things right matters more than doing them fast. That the system works when people trust it enough to be patient. Everything I did to honor what he taught me. You don't get to invoke his name to justify your own corruption. Veronica's eyes were wild now, desperate. You think you've won. You think you're some kind of hero. But everyone's gonna know you hid who you were. They'll know you deceived everyone. I didn't hide anything. I just didn't announce it. There's a difference. And if people can't understand that difference, then I've failed to teach the right lesson. Which is what? That sheriffs can do whatever they want? That anyone, sheriff or not, can defend their rights if they're patient and thorough and trust the system to work. That's the lesson. That's what matters. Torres stepped between us. This meeting is over. Ms. Sterling, you'll be hearing from the district attorney within the week. Sheriff Morales, thank you for your cooperation throughout this process. We left separately. Veronica and her attorney through one exit, me and Claudia through another. In the parking lot, Claudia let out a breath she'd been holding. That was brutal. That was necessary. She destroyed herself in there. You barely had to say anything. Sometimes the best victory is the one where you don't have to fight. You just have to stand still and let truth arrive. We drove back in silence. I was processing. Not triumph, not vindication, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd done it right, even when it was hard, even when everyone questioned it. I trusted the process, and the process had worked. My phone rang. Sophie. Mom, Maggie just called. She said Veronica left the AG's office looking like she'd seen a ghost. What happened? The truth happened. All of it. She knows who I am now, and she knows I have everything documented. Oh my God, what did she say? What people always say when they realize they've lost. That it's not fair. That I manipulated everything. That I should have told her sooner. Should you have? No. Because then she could claim I used my position to intimidate her. This way, nobody can claim that. The investigation was independent, the evidence is clean, the outcome is unimpeachable. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Dad would be proud of you. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true. You did this exactly the way he would have. And I'm proud too. How's the wedding planning? She laughed, shaky but real. Well, the venue just called to apologize for ever doubting us. Apparently, the news is already spreading, so that's good. That's very good. Mom, when this is all over, when she's charged and tried and everything, are you going to be okay? I'm okay now, baby. This was never about destroying her. It was about protecting what your father built and making sure the system works the way it's supposed to. Mission accomplished. Monday morning, the news broke. Local paper ran the headline, Sheriff cleared, HOA president faces fraud charges. By noon, it was picked up by state news. By evening, national outlets were calling it the perfect example of patience and process over power and performance. The phone in my office didn't stop ringing. Reporters wanting statements, citizens wanting to thank me, other sheriffs wanting to know how I'd handled it. I directed everything through our public information officer and focused on normal work. But Tuesday brought something unexpected. Patricia Wu called my office, the first woman Veronica had targeted, the one who'd lost her home 3 years ago. Sheriff Morales, I saw the news. I wanted to thank you. You don't need to thank me. I was just protecting my own rights. No, you were protecting all of us. Because now we have proof. Now we can file civil suits. Now we can get justice too. Her voice broke on the last word. I lost my home. My husband's workshop where he built furniture. The garden where we raised our kids. I lost everything because I thought I had to fight alone. You showed me I didn't. Mrs. Wu, you weren't alone. You just didn't know where to look yet. Can I ask you something? Of course. How did you stay so calm? How did you not just explode and tell her off? How did you keep it together? I thought about Carlos, about his patience, about all the times he'd talked me through frustration and anger, and the urge to just make something stop, even if it meant doing it wrong. My husband used to say that anger is expensive. It costs you judgment, costs you clarity, costs you the ability to see 3 moves ahead. So when I felt angry, I'd ask myself, what would it cost to act on this right now? And if the cost was too high, I'd wait. That's wisdom. That's survival. And I learned it from someone who loved me enough to teach me even when I didn't want to learn. Wednesday, the district attorney's office announced formal charges. 5 counts of real estate fraud, 3 counts of filing false reports, multiple counts of harassment. Veronica was arrested Thursday morning at her home. The news cameras captured her being led out in handcuffs, face pale, eyes red. The image of someone whose entire world had collapsed. I didn't watch it live. Couldn't bring myself to take satisfaction in that particular moment. But Sophie called me immediately. Mom, it's happening. They arrested her. It's all over the news. I know. How do you feel? Tired? Relieved? Ready for this chapter to close? The venue called again. They want to feature your story in their wedding blog. Show how we persevered through adversity. Tell them no thank you. This wedding is about you and James, not about me and Veronica. You sure? It could be empowering for other brides dealing with family drama. I'm sure. Let someone else be the example. You just be happy. I heard her smile through the phone. I can do that. Friday afternoon, Maggie knocked on my door. I was home, catching up on paperwork, trying to return to some version of normal. She had a covered dish and that look that said we were going to talk whether I wanted to or not. Chicken enchiladas. Your favorite. And before you say you're not hungry, you're eating. We sat at my kitchen table. Same table where Carlos and I had shared thousands of meals. Where Sophie had done her homework. Where life had happened in all its mundane, beautiful complexity. Maggie served us both. Waited until I'd taken a bite before speaking. The neighborhood is different now. You feel it? I do. People are talking, not gossip. Real conversations about how they let Veronica intimidate them, how they stayed silent when they should have spoken up. how they learned something watching you handle this. I hope they learned the right things. They learned that patience isn't weakness, that documentation beats confrontation, that doing things right takes longer, but lasts longer. She paused. They also learned that sheriffs are people, that you shop at the same grocery store and plant the same gardens and grieve the same losses, and that maybe authority isn't something to fear if it's worn with humility. I wasn't trying to teach lessons, Maggie. I was just trying to protect my husband's bench, and in protecting it, you protected all of us. Showed us we don't have to give in to bullies. Showed us the system works if we trust it. I set down my fork. The system works if we work it correctly. That's the real lesson. It's not automatic. It's not guaranteed. You have to be patient and thorough and willing to let it take time. Carlos taught you that. Carlos lived it. I'm just trying to do the same. We ate in comfortable silence. Outside, the garden was settling into autumn gold. The roses were finishing their season. Carlos's bench sat solid and permanent in the center of it all. Maggie broke the quiet. What happens now, to Veronica? Trial, probably. Or plea deal if her lawyer has any sense. Either way, she faces consequences. Restitution to the women she defrauded. Possible prison time. Definitely prohibition from any HOA involvement. And you? I go back to being sheriff. Go back to normal life. Help Sophie plan her wedding. Wait for my grandchild. Tend my garden. Just like that? After all this? Just like that. Because this was never about revenge or victory. It was about protecting something worth protecting and doing it the right way. Maggie reached across the table, squeezed my hand. Carlos would be so proud. And I am too. Saturday, the women came forward. All 6 of Veronica's previous targets. They held a press conference at the county building. Patricia Wu spoke for the group. We're here today to reclaim our voices. For years, we lived with shame, thinking we weren't strong enough, weren't smart enough, weren't worthy of our own homes. But Sheriff Morales showed us that wasn't true. She showed us we were targeted, exploited, and that it wasn't our fault. The cameras captured their faces. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, different backgrounds, different circumstances, united by shared trauma and now shared determination. We're filing civil suits, seeking restitution, and we're working with the DA to ensure Veronica Sterling faces full accountability. Not for revenge, but for justice, and to make sure no other woman faces what we faced. Claudia called me after watching it. Boss, you started something, you know that, right? I just documented my own case. You did more than that. You gave them permission to speak, showed them they weren't alone. That's leadership that goes beyond the badge. I hope it makes a difference. It already has. Sunday, I sat on Carlos's bench for a long time, fall sunshine warm on my face, the smell of earth and dried leaves, the quiet of a neighborhood at peace. I talked to him, told him everything, the investigation, the revelation, Veronica's arrest, the women coming forward, Sophie's relief, all of it. I think we did okay, I told his memory. We protected what you built, did it the right way. Showed people that patience and process matter. The wind moved through the oak trees, scattered leaves across the lawn. I miss you every day, every single day. But I'm learning to carry that, to let it make me stronger instead of breaking me. A car pulled into the driveway. Sophie and James. She was showing now, the pregnancy visible in her silhouette. They walked over, sat on either side of me on the bench. We brought lunch, Sophie said. Thought we could eat in the garden, like Dad used to do on Sundays. That sounds perfect. James looked at the bench, at the carved name, at the roses surrounding us. Mr. Morales built something beautiful here, and you protected it. That takes real courage. It wasn't courage, it was stubbornness, and a good example to follow. Sophie leaned her head on my shoulder. When the baby's old enough, I'm going to bring her here. Tell her about her grandfather, about how he built this, and about how you defended it. Not just me, Maggie, Claudia, all the women who stood up. It was never just me. But you led the way. I did what needed doing, that's all. We sat together in the autumn sun, 3 generations connected by love and loss and determination. And I felt something settle in my chest. Not closure exactly, but completion. The fight was over. The truth was known. Justice was in process. And the bench would stay. Monday morning, I returned to work fully. No more investigations. No more divided attention. Just the normal rhythm of running a sheriff's department in a rural California county. But everything felt different now. Lighter somehow. like a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying had finally lifted. Claudia knocked on my door mid-morning. "Boss, you've got visitors, Patricia, Wu, and the others. They want to thank you in person. Send them in." 6 women filed into my office, nervous, grateful, determined. Patricia spoke first. "Sheriff Morales, we wanted you to know that we've formed a support group. Women who've faced HOA harassment. We're creating resources, legal guides, documentation templates. Everything you use to protect yourself, we're sharing with others." "That's excellent. That's exactly what should happen." Another woman, Lisa Morrison, stepped forward. "We're also working with the state legislature, proposing HOA reform, mandatory oversight, appeal processes, protections for vulnerable homeowners. We're calling it the Morales Act." I felt my throat tighten. "That's very kind, but my name doesn't need to be on it." "It's not your name," Patricia said gently. "It's your husband's, Carlos Morales, the man whose memorial started all this. We thought he should be remembered for inspiring change." I couldn't speak for a moment, just nodded. He would have liked that. He always said small actions create big ripples. This is proof. They stayed for 20 minutes, sharing stories, making plans, turning trauma into purpose. When they left, Claudia came back in. That was good, seeing them empowered instead of victimized. It's what should have happened from the beginning. If the system had worked right, Veronica never would have gotten this far. True. But sometimes systems need to break a little before people fix them. You were the break that forced the fix. I'm not sure that's comforting. It's reality, and reality is what we deal with. Tuesday, the district attorney called with an update. "Sheriff, I wanted you to know that Veronica Sterling's attorney has approached us about a plea deal." "I'm listening." "She'll plead guilty to fraud and false reporting. Accept restitution to all victims. 2 years prison, 3 years probation, permanent prohibition from HOA service." "And the victims are okay with this?" "We've consulted with all of them. They support it. They want resolution more than extended litigation." "Then I support it too." "There's one more thing. She's required to make a public apology, acknowledging what she did, taking responsibility. It'll be recorded and published." "When?" "Next week. We thought you should know in case you want to attend." I thought about it, about whether I needed to see Veronica acknowledge her crimes, whether that would bring any satisfaction or just prolong the pain. I don't need to be there. This was never about me getting an apology. It was about the system working correctly. If she's pleading guilty and making restitution, the system worked. Understood. But Sheriff, for what it's worth, what you did here matters. You showed that even people in power can be targeted, and that the way you respond to that targeting says everything about your character. I just did my job, protected my rights, trusted the process. With more patience than most people could manage. That's what made the difference. Wednesday, I picked up Sophie for a wedding dress fitting. She'd postponed it twice during the investigation. Now we were back on track with 2 months until the wedding. In the bridal shop, watching her model dresses, I felt Carlos's absence like a physical ache. He should have been here, should have been the one to walk her down the aisle, should have been able to meet his grandchild. But he wasn't, and I had to be enough for both of us. Sophie caught my expression in the mirror. "You're thinking about Dad." "Always. He'd love this one, the lace, the simple elegance. He'd love you in anything, just like I do." She turned, looked at me seriously. "Mom, I need to ask you something." "Anything." "Are you okay? Really okay? Because you've been so strong through all of this, so steady. And I'm worried that when it's over, when everything settles, you're going to crash." "I might. Probably will, if I'm honest. But I'll survive it. Same way I survived losing him, one day at a time. Promise me you'll talk to someone if it gets bad. Maggie or Claudia or a therapist or anyone." "I promise. And Sophie, I'm going to be okay. Not because I'm strong, but because I have you. And soon I'll have a grandchild. And I have Carlos's memory to honor. That's enough to keep going." She hugged me there in the bridal shop, both of us crying a little, both of us healing in our own ways. The week Veronica was sentenced, I didn't attend the hearing, didn't read the coverage, just focused on my work and let justice happen without my observation. But that evening, Maggie came over with the local paper. "You should see this." The headline read, "Former HOA President Sentenced in Fraud Scheme." Below it, a photo of Veronica leaving the courthouse, and beneath that, excerpts from her required public apology. "I acknowledge that I abused my position as HOA president. I targeted vulnerable women and exploited their grief for financial gain. I filed false police reports and attempted to weaponize law enforcement against people who refused my demands. I take full responsibility for my actions and apologize to everyone I harmed. The words were stiff, clearly written by her attorney, but they were on record, public, permanent. Maggie watched me read it. How do you feel? Mostly I just feel tired and ready to move on. You're not satisfied? Not even a little? I'm satisfied that the system worked, that truth mattered more than power, that patience paid off. But I'm not satisfied in the way you mean. I don't feel vindicated or triumphant. I just feel done. That's healthy, I think. Closure without gloating. Carlos used to say that the best victories are the ones where everyone learns something. I hope people learned. I hope Veronica learned. But I'm not invested in how she feels about it anymore. We sat together on this bench, watching the last light fade from the sky. The garden looks good, Maggie said. The roses are going dormant, but they'll come back strong in spring. That's the thing about roses. They survive winter, come back stronger, keep blooming. Like you. Like all of us, I corrected. Everyone who went through this and came out the other side. 2 weeks before Sophie's wedding, the neighborhood threw a party. Garden celebration, they called it. 200 people in the common area, potluck dinner, kids playing. Families together. The new HOA president, elected after Veronica's resignation, made a short speech. This neighborhood went through something difficult. We learned hard lessons about power and accountability and standing up for what's right. But we came through it together. And we're stronger now. He gestured to where I stood with Sophie and Maggie. We're grateful to Sheriff Morales for showing us that patience and process matter, for trusting the system when she could have short-circuited it, for teaching us all something about integrity. People clapped. I nodded acknowledgement but didn't speak. This wasn't my moment. It was the community's. Later, Sophie and I walked back to my house together. She linked her arm through mine. Big day coming up. The biggest. Are you nervous? Terrified? Excited? All of it. Your father would have loved walking you down the aisle. He will be, in every way that matters. We reached my driveway, the bench visible in the garden, solid and permanent. Thank you, Mom. For what? For fighting for this. For not giving up. For showing me what strength really looks like. I learned it from your father. I'm just passing it on. Well, I'm passing it to my daughter. And she's going to know about her grandparents, both of them, and how they built things to last. We stood there together, mother and daughter, on the edge of a wedding and a birth and a new chapter. And I felt Carlos's presence as clearly as if he were standing beside us. The bench would stay, the garden would bloom, and the lessons learned would ripple out farther than any of us could measure. That was enough. That was everything. 6 months after Veronica Sterling began serving her sentence, a letter arrived at my office, forwarded from the county clerk, handwritten envelope, return address from 3 counties over. I opened it during my lunch break, sitting at my desk with coffee going cold and case files stacked like accusations of neglected work. The letter was 3 pages, careful handwriting, the words of someone trying to be brave while feeling anything but. Dear Sheriff Morales, my name is Catherine Chen. I'm a widow. My HOA president is targeting me with violations I believe are designed to force me to sell my home. I saw what happened in your case. I read about how you handled it. I'm writing because I don't know what else to do. Can you help? I read it twice, then a third time, felt the familiar weight of recognition. Another woman, another memorial being attacked, another bully who thought grief made people weak instead of dangerous. I pulled out my personal station sheet, started writing. Dear Catherine, I understand what you're facing. I understand the fear and the isolation and the feeling that nobody will believe you. But you're not alone, and you're not powerless. Here's what you need to do. I wrote for 30 minutes, step-by-step instructions. Document everything. Install cameras. Know your rights. Stay calm no matter what. Build an airtight record. Trust the process, even when it feels impossible. And then I wrote the most important part. You're not weak because you're grieving. You're not vulnerable because you're alone. You're a homeowner with rights, a citizen with protection under law, a human being who deserves to memorialize love in whatever way brings you peace. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, and know that every day you stand your ground, you make it easier for the next person to do the same. I signed it, sealed it, sent it priority mail. Claudia knocked and entered without waiting, saw what I was doing. Another one? Another one. How many is that this month? 17. From across the state, some from out of state. All the same pattern. Widows, divorcees, single mothers, all being targeted by HOA boards run by people who see vulnerability instead of humanity. She sat down across from me. You can't save them all, boss. I'm not trying to save them. I'm trying to teach them to save themselves. There's a difference. Still, that's a lot of weight to carry. It's lighter than you'd think, because most of them don't need saving. They just need permission to fight back, and proof that fighting back works. The phone rang. Sophie. I answered immediately. Mom, I'm at the hospital. My heart stopped. What's wrong? The baby? Nothing's wrong. I'm in labor. James is with me. Can you come? I was already grabbing my keys. On my way. The drive to the hospital took 25 minutes that felt like hours. Every red light an eternity. Every slow driver a personal affront. My grandchild was coming. Carlos's grandchild. The continuation of everything we'd built together. Sophie was in a labor room when I arrived. James holding her hand, monitors beeping, medical staff moving with practiced efficiency. She saw me and started crying. Mom, you made it. I wouldn't miss this for anything. I took her other hand, felt her squeeze through a contraction, watched her breathe through pain with the same determination she'd shown through everything else. Your father should be here. He is, you know he is. The labor lasted 6 hours, long enough for me to remember my own. The fear and the pain and the overwhelming sense that your life is about to change in ways you can't imagine or prepare for. At 3:27 in the afternoon, Elena Morales Bennett entered the world. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Perfect lungs announcing her arrival to everyone within earshot. They placed her on Sophie's chest, tiny and red and furious at the indignity of being born. And I watched my daughter become a mother, watched James become a father, watched the next generation begin. Can I hold her? Sophie nodded, too exhausted and overwhelmed to speak. I took my granddaughter in my arms, felt her weight, studied her face, saw Carlos in the shape of her eyes, saw Sophie in the curve of her mouth, saw the future in every tiny feature. Welcome, Elena. Your grandfather would have loved you so much, and I'm going to make sure you know exactly who he was. That night, I sat in the hospital chair, while Sophie and James slept, Elena in the bassinet beside them. And I thought about legacy, about what we leave behind, about how Carlos had built a bench and I'd fought to keep it, and now his great-granddaughter would grow up knowing his name and his story. The bench wasn't just wood anymore. It was proof that love endures, that memory matters, that some things are worth fighting for even when the fight seems small or petty or beneath you. 2 weeks after Elena's birth, the California State Legislature passed the Morales Act, comprehensive HOA reform, mandatory independent oversight, transparent violation processes, protection for memorial structures, appeal procedures, criminal penalties for targeting vulnerable homeowners. The signing ceremony was held at the Capitol. Governor present, media coverage, Patricia Wu and the other victims in attendance. I was invited to speak but declined. This wasn't about me. Instead, Patricia spoke. Read a statement on behalf of all of us. This law is named after Carlos Morales, a man who built beautiful things and left a legacy of love. His widow protected his memory, and in protecting it, she protected all of us. This law ensures that no one else has to fight that battle alone. The footage aired on evening news. I watched it from my living room with Sophie and Elena, my daughter nursing her baby, 3 generations in one frame. And Sophie looked up from Elena. Dad would be proud. He'd probably say we made too big a deal about a bench. She smiled. He'd say that, and then he'd be secretly proud anyway. October arrived with perfect California autumn weather, golden light, crisp mornings, the kind of days made for weddings. Sophie's ceremony was held in my backyard. 200 guests, white chairs arranged in rows facing the garden where Carlos's bench sat, surrounded by roses in their second bloom. I walked her down the aisle wearing my best suit and Carlos's watch and every ounce of composure I could gather. She was radiant. James was nervous and perfect. And when the officiant asked who gives this woman, I said what we'd planned. Her father and I do. Present tense. because he was there. In the bench she'd insisted be part of the ceremony. In the roses we'd planted together. In every lesson he'd taught her about strength and patience and doing things right. The ceremony included a unity ritual Sophie had designed herself. She and James planted a rose bush from Carlos's garden, roots from the past growing into their future. As I watched them exchange vows, I felt Carlos beside me. Not literally, but in the way that matters. In the values they were pledging to uphold. In the family they were building. In the continuity of love across generations. Maggie sat next to me, dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Beautiful wedding. He would have loved it. You did good, mija. Raising her alone these last 2 years. Getting her here. She's extraordinary. We raised her, Carlos and me. I'm just finishing what we started. At the reception, Patricia Wu approached with the other 5 women who'd been Veronica's victims. Sheriff Morales, we wanted to give you something. They presented a plaque, bronze, engraved to Diana Morales, who showed us that strength is patience, that power is restraint, that justice is worth waiting for. With gratitude from women who found their voices by watching yours. I couldn't speak for a moment, just held the plaque and felt the weight of what they'd survived and how far they'd come. This belongs to all of us. Everyone who stood up, everyone who documented, everyone who trusted the system when it was hard. Lisa Morrison shook her head. You led the way, own that. And so I did. Accepted their gratitude, honored their journey, acknowledged that sometimes one person's fight becomes everyone's permission to stop accepting the unacceptable. 3 months after the wedding, I received another letter, this one from Veronica Sterling. Prison stationery, careful handwriting, no return address beyond the facility name. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me read it. Sheriff Morales, I'm writing to apologize. Not the court-ordered apology my lawyer wrote, a real one. I was wrong. I saw your grief and your vulnerability, and I tried to exploit them. I saw women alone and thought they were weak. I was so focused on what I could take that I never saw what I was destroying. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, and I'm ashamed. I read it twice, felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, no anger, just a kind of distant acknowledgement that maybe she'd learned something after all. I didn't respond, didn't need to. Her apology wasn't mine to accept or reject. It was between her and her conscience. My part in her story was over. Spring came, and with it the garden's renewal, roses blooming stronger than ever, the bench weathering another season. Elena taking her first steps on the lawn where her grandfather had planted seeds that grew into beauty. I brought her to the garden often, sat with her on the bench, told her stories about Carlos even though she was too young to understand. Your grandfather built this with his own hands, while he was sick, while he was scared. He built it anyway because he wanted to leave something permanent, something beautiful, something that would last after he was gone. Elena babbled nonsense sounds and grabbed at my hair, and had no idea she was sitting in the center of a story that had changed laws and empowered women, and proved that patience could defeat power. But someday she would know, and that knowledge would be part of her inheritance. The garden expanded that year. What started as Carlos's memorial became a neighborhood gathering place. Maggie added her husband's bench. 3 other families added plaques and plantings for their own lost loved ones. The space transformed from one widow's grief into a community's shared remembrance. We held the dedication ceremony on the anniversary of Carlos's death. 2 years since he'd left. 2 years of fighting and growing and learning to carry loss while still moving forward. The new plaque read, Community Memorial Garden, a place to honor love, remember loss, and celebrate the endurance of memory. Maggie spoke at the dedication. This garden started with one woman's refusal to erase her husband's memory. It grew because she showed us that defending what we love isn't selfish. It's sacred. Now it belongs to all of us. All our memories, all our love, all our determination to make beauty permanent. I looked around at the 100 people gathered, neighbors who'd stood with me, strangers who'd heard the story and come to support, women from across the state who'd fought their own battles and won. And I felt something settle in my chest that hadn't been settled in 2 years. Not closure, but continuation. The difference between ending and evolving. That evening, Sophie brought Elena over for dinner. My daughter was different now, more confident, more grounded. Motherhood had given her a strength I recognized because I'd found it the same way. We sat in the garden after Elena fell asleep, the baby monitor on the bench between us, the sun setting through oak branches. Mom, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. I was angry at you. During all of it, the investigation, the waiting, the refusing to just tell Veronica who you were and end it. I know. I thought you were being stubborn, proving a point, making it harder than it needed to be. But I understand now. You were teaching me. Teaching you what? That doing things right matters more than doing them fast. That power without restraint is just bullying. That the system works when we trust it enough to be patient. She looked at the bench, at her father's name. I'm going to teach Elena the same thing. Because these lessons, this strength, this patience, it's as much my inheritance as this house or this garden. And I want her to have it too. Your father would be proud. He'd say I'm finally listening to what he tried to teach me 20 years ago. We sat in comfortable silence, mother and daughter, sharing space with memories and hopes and the continuation of love across time. Eventually, Sophie spoke again. Do you still talk to him? To Dad? Every day. Out here usually. Sometimes in my head, sometimes out loud. What do you tell him? That I'm doing my best. That I'm trying to honor what we built. That I miss him every single day, but I'm not broken by missing him. Do you think he hears you? I think love doesn't stop when hearts do. I think he's in this bench and these roses and you and Elena. I think he's everywhere we remember him. And yes, I think he hears me. The fall brought speaking invitations, law enforcement conferences, women's advocacy groups, legislative committees. Everyone wanted to hear about the HOA case, about patience and process, about how to stand up to institutional bullying. I accepted selectively, spoke when I thought it would matter, declined when it felt like performance. At a sheriff's conference in Sacramento, a young female sheriff approached me after my presentation. Sheriff Morales, I'm dealing with something similar. Council member targeting my department, trying to force budget cuts by manufacturing scandals. How did you stay calm? I remembered being young in this job. Remembered feeling like every challenge was a referendum on my worth. Remembered Carlos talking me through those moments. The same way you will. By remembering that your job is to serve, not to win. By documenting everything. By trusting that truth outlasts lies if you give it time. But what if time runs out? What if the lies work faster than the truth? Then you make sure the record is so complete that even if you lose the battle, the next person wins the war. Legacy isn't about personal victory. It's about making the path easier for whoever comes after. She thanked me, walked away looking slightly less overwhelmed, and I hoped she'd remember. Hoped she'd be patient when it was hard. Hoped she'd trust the process, even when it felt impossible. Winter brought Elena's first birthday. The party was held in the garden despite the cold. Heaters and blankets and hot chocolate. Family and friends and neighbors who'd become family. Elena smashed cake into her face with pure joy, tottered around on unsteady legs, laughed at everything and everyone, completely unaware that she was surrounded by people who'd fought battles and won wars and learned lessons that would someday be hers to carry. I held her that evening after everyone left, rocked her in the chair where I'd rocked Sophie decades ago, whispered the same stories Carlos had whispered to our daughter. You come from fighters, Elena, not fighters who use fists or anger, fighters who use patience, who document everything, who trust that doing things right matters more than doing them fast. Your grandfather was one, your grandmother is one, your mother is becoming one, and someday, if you need to be, you will be too. She fell asleep in my arms. Warm weight, soft breathing, the future embodied in 6 pounds of determination and possibility. Spring returned, and with it another letter, this one from Catherine Chen, the woman who'd written me a year ago about her HOA troubles. Dear Sheriff Morales, I wanted to thank you and update you. I followed your advice, documented everything, stayed calm, installed cameras, built an airtight record. My HOA president tried to force me to sell, filed false complaints, even called the police once claiming I threatened him. But I had everything recorded, everything documented. The investigation cleared me. He's facing charges now. And I'm still in my home, still tending my husband's garden, still standing, because you showed me how. I read it to Maggie over tea in her garden. Our benches visible through the fence. Our memories intertwined. That's 17 successful cases now. Women who fought back and won. Maggie smiled. You started a movement, Mija. I started a conversation about rights and grief and refusing to let bullies win. The movement is all those women choosing to fight. Call it what you want. You change things. Carlos changed things. I just protected what he built. The ripple effect is his as much as mine. 2 years after Veronica's sentencing, she was released on parole. I heard about it through official channels, saw the notification, felt nothing. Sophie called immediately. Mom, did you see? I saw. Are you worried about her coming back? No. She's prohibited from HOA involvement, banned from this county. And she knows that if she violates parole, she goes back to prison. She's done with us. But what if she's not? What if she tries something? Then we document it and address it appropriately. Same as before. Fear doesn't get to dictate our choices. You sound like Dad. Good. That means I'm remembering the right lessons. That summer, the garden hosted its first wedding. A young couple from the neighborhood. They'd watched Sophie's ceremony, fallen in love with the space, asked if they could use it. I said yes on one condition, that they plant a rose bush, add to the garden, contribute to the continuity. They did. And the garden grew again. More roses, more benches, more memories woven into the soil and stone. It became tradition after that. Weddings and memorials and celebrations all held in the space that had started as one man's final project and become a community's shared heart. Maggie and I tended it together, pruning and planting and maintaining, 2 widows building beauty from loss, teaching younger generations that grief doesn't have to destroy, that memory can create rather than just mourn. 3 years after Carlos died, I received an invitation to speak at the National Sheriff's Association Annual Conference. Keynote address. Topic: Leadership, Restraint, and Public Trust. I almost declined. Public speaking had never been comfortable, and talking about myself felt wrong somehow. But Claudia convinced me. Boss, this isn't about you. It's about the lesson. About showing 500 sheriffs that power works best when it's not flexed. That patience beats performance. That integrity matters more than ego. So I went, stood on a stage in front of law enforcement leaders from across the country, and told them about a bench and a bully and a decision to trust the process, even when it was hard. I could have ended it in 5 seconds by revealing my position, by using my authority to intimidate, by making it about power instead of rights. But that would have taught the wrong lesson. It would have said that sheriffs are above the system instead of responsible for maintaining it. The room was silent, attentive, absorbing. My husband used to say that the badge is a burden as much as an honor, that it requires us to be better, more patient, more restrained, because people are watching how we use power. And if we use it wrong, we undermine the entire system. I paused, thought about Carlos, about all the times he'd talked me through anger and frustration and the urge to just make problems stop through force of will. I miss him every day. But he's still teaching me, still showing me that doing things right takes longer but lasts longer. That documentation beats declaration. That truth outlasts performance. The standing ovations surprised me, but the conversations afterward mattered more. Sheriff after sheriff sharing their own struggles with restraint, their own temptations to use position instead of process, their own decisions to trust systems even when it was hard. A female sheriff from Texas pulled me aside. My department is under investigation right now. Political hit job. I've been tempted to fight back publicly, defend myself aggressively. But your story reminded me that sometimes the best defense is perfect documentation and professional silence. I took her hand. Stay patient. Trust the process. Document everything. And remember that your response teaches more than your words ever could. Elena turned 2, then 3. Grew from baby to toddler to small person with opinions and questions and an alarming amount of her grandfather's determination. She loved the garden, helped me water roses, asked endless questions about the bench and the names and why we planted flowers for people who were gone. I answered honestly, told her about Carlos, about love and loss and memory, about how some things are worth fighting for even when the fight seems small. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough that the garden mattered, that her grandfather mattered, that remembering was important. 4 years after Carlos died, I attended Veronica Sterling's parole hearing, not to testify, just to observe, to see closure if it existed. She looked different, older, tired, the polish and performance gone. just a woman who'd made terrible choices and paid for them. Her parole officer's report was positive. She'd completed all requirements, paid full restitution, attended therapy, maintained employment, stayed away from HOA involvement, met every condition. The board granted continued parole. She would remain free, remain prohibited from the activities that had defined her, remain a cautionary tale about the cost of cruelty. As she left the hearing room, our eyes met briefly. She nodded, not apology, not acknowledgement, just recognition. Two people whose lives had intersected violently and separated permanently. I nodded back and let her go. Not forgiveness exactly, but release, letting go of the space she'd occupied in my mind. That evening, I sat on Carlos's bench alone, watched the sunset through branches he'd planted, ran my hands over wood he'd carved, felt the permanence of what he'd built and what I'd protected. "I'm doing okay," I told his memory. "It's been 4 years. 4 years of missing you, and learning to carry that missing without being destroyed by it. 4 years of fighting battles you would have been proud of. 4 years of teaching Sophie and Elena lessons you started." The wind moved through the roses, scattered petals across the lawn. The bench stayed. That's what matters. The thing you built with your own hands while you were dying, it stayed. And it became more than either of us imagined. A garden, a gathering place, a symbol that love endures and memory matters, and some things are worth fighting for. I sat until dark, until stars emerged, until the cold drove me inside to warmth and light and the continuing demands of living. 5 years after Carlos died, Sophie announced she was pregnant again. Elena was going to be a big sister. The family was growing, the legacy extending. And in the garden, the roses bloomed stronger than ever, fed by memories and tended by love, proof that beautiful things can grow from grief if you give them time and care and refuse to let cruelty destroy them. The bench remained, solid and permanent, Carlos's name carved deep, a memorial that had become a movement, a fight that had become a loss that had transformed into legacy. And I remained, sheriff and widow, mother and grandmother, fighter and teacher, still standing, still protecting what mattered, still honoring what Carlos had built by building on top of it. The garden kept growing, the community kept healing, the lessons kept spreading. And somewhere in the evening air, I could almost hear Carlos's voice. "That's my girl, you did it right. You made it last." I smiled into the darkness. We did it right, together, across time and death and everything in between. And that was enough. That was everything.